a full agenda tonight. I think I'll jump right in. 7 o'clock, we're going to call this meeting of the Girdwood Board of Supervisors to order. Girdwood Board of Supervisors, its committees and subcommittees are subject to the Alaska Open Meetings Act as found in Alaska Statute 44.62.310 and an Anchorage Municipal Code 1.25 public meetings. The Girdwood Board of Supervisors operates under the Girdwood Public Meetings Standards of Conduct. My name is Jennifer Wingard. I am co-chair and also land use committee supervisor. And I'll go to Brianna and then work our way down this way.
Thank you. I'm Brianna Sullivan, co-chair and fire department supervisor.
Mike Edrington, housing and economic development support supervisor.
Kai Wade, Parks Rec cemetery supervisor.
And Amanda Sassy, public safety, roads and utilities supervisor.
I'd like to start with our land acknowledgement. The Girdwood Board of Supervisors acknowledges the indigenous peoples of Alaska whose land we reside on. The community of Girdwood, situated between the areas known to be Dena'ina and Alutiiq homeland, respects the people who were stewards of this land for generations. We commit to the continued stewardship of this land and are grateful to be part of a wider community that seeks to maintain a sustainable use of Girdwood Valley for present and future peoples. We'll start with any disclosures? No.
I have one on item number 15. I'm chairperson of Imagine Girdwood, so effectively I'm the petitioner for this item. Therefore, do not wish to. They should be recused from participation.
Let me make sure I'm straight on that, asking to be recused, given your position.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, given that request, I think I would recuse you as requested. Unless anybody disagrees with that. Any other disclosures? Oh, Amanda.
Same item number 15. I'm the treasurer of Imagine Girdwood.
I was going to put us at just having quorum 3. But I don't know that I can make distinctions between president or secretary. So depending what other members of the board think, I would say let's excuse both of them, unless if you guys feel any.
This is new business, so.
So we're not even voting on it.
Yeah, we're not gonna make any decisions.
That's right. Okay. All right. Given that, do we have any other disclosures? Okay. I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
Move to approve.
Second with
Sure.
amendment for the agenda. I asked that we move number 22 in new business up to old business after number 14, based on the date of the zoning for the April 11th.
Okay, so I have one question about that, which is that this is actually voluntary on the part of the petitioner and was not required as part of the planning and zoning process. And so as such, we're moving it up into an action zone when in fact, action isn't necessarily warranted based on the system as has been described to the petitioner. I personally would like to see it stay on new business unless in the course of the conversation, we come up with a reason that it really needs to be voted on tonight, but yes.
Just to give clarification, the reason we brought this to your attention, the planning department sent this seeking comment, and as they do from community councils associated with these variances, they send it. So there was comment to be delivered by GBOS. The deadline was given for April 11th.
Okay, I'm sorry. I understood it to be at the request of community members. So if it's planning and zoning, then okay.
Do we know if they're seeking like a letter from us or some kind of action on it?
I can address that. So I've had community members ask me about this particular issue, which is why I thought we should bring it out and have that discussion. And I also will support moving it to old business. It doesn't mean we have to act. It means we have the option of acting. So it fulfills, I think, what Jennifer asked for as well. And it's something if we choose to make an act, we can do so.
I don't remember this in the land use committee. Maybe I missed it.
That's correct. It didn't come up in the land use committee because of timing, but it would be in front of land use committee before the 11th.
Okay.
So we're just in that sort of offset timing.
Okay, so can we, how would we feel about, let's vote on, if we're done talking about that much, can we vote on just the amendment? I'm going to assume that we, if I sent approve the agenda, but I would like to talk about the amendment. And so do we have any objections to the amendment Brianna gave to move item number, this is 22, into the end of old business, essentially making it number 15 under old business, or 14B under old business? We have no objections to that. Okay, we're going to do that. Also, in the interest of time, and then based on some of what I learned at the 4-acre thing, I'm interested in, I can't move for this, but I would like to see the supervisor reports moved to the end just for this meeting, because this meeting is so packed, and move it into part of 24. So 4-acre suggested that we really focus on keeping things in the present and what's happening in the future. Supervisor reports tend to be on what has happened in the past. So I would like to know if we can, for this meeting in particular, see how it goes, move that to 24.
So moved.
Okay. And I need a second on that.
I'll second Bob's discussion. Although
Okay.
actually, the thing I was going to mention is in the future. So.
Oh, well, by all means. All right. Okay. Let's real quickly vote on that, or actually more precisely, do we have any objections?
No objection unless somebody, I don't mind doing this every time for the church, but since this was just brought up, I don't know if anybody a board member has something pressing that they wanted to bring up, that they weren't aware that this was going to be.
Sure. So how about this? Let's do whatever happens under supervisor reports under number 3 is just going to be if somebody has something coming up in the future, but we're not going to do, we did X, Y, and Z.
Sure.
Okay. Are we good? Okay.
So I'll pull that motion.
Well, we're still having room for supervisors reports if you want to do a historic report. Whatever.
Right. Noted.
Okay. I think we have an agenda. Do we need to vote on this, or are we all happy now with the agenda as is? Does anyone have anything else to agendas? Okay, good. Excellent. Moving on. Oh, we need motions for minutes approval.
I'll move to approve the meeting minutes for the 26th of February.
Second.
Okay, do we have any discussion about those? All right, do we have any objections to approving them? Go by assent. All right, next, March 20th meeting minutes.
I move to approve the meeting minutes for the budget year review.
Second.
Okay, any objections to accepting this? Okay, excellent. So, done. Announcements. The public is encouraged to ask questions and provide comment. Please raise your hand and wait to be acknowledged. To help discussion stay productive, please direct your comments to the board rather than other members of the public, and keep your comments focused on the business under discussion. Please be respectful of everyone's opinions. We have an upcoming meeting, MOA GBOS quarterly meeting, April 29th at 4 p.m. And then there's also the GBOS LUC joint meeting regarding Girdwood Comprehensive Plan, April 29th at 7 p.m. 29th is going to be a scintillating day. All right, I would like to jump right into presentations, and I believe we have Chugach Electric Association here.
Hello,
Hi.
good evening. I'm Julie Haskett. I'm the communications manager at Chugach Electric. And tonight we're going to give you a brief presentation on the Indian to Girdwood transmission line rebuild. And we really appreciate getting on your agenda and giving us this opportunity to update you and the community. Mike Miller from Chugach is going to give just a brief overview of the project. And then Jason Hodges from Northern Powerline Constructors is going to kind of walk you through some of the steps of what's going to happen when. We know that you have limited time, so we can go fast or slow, but we want to get through it, take your questions, and we can come back another time as well. So Mike, can you show yourself and start with the presentation? I know you have some slides.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you guys hear me okay?
We can hear you.
All right, so I'll share my screen here and we'll jump into it. Like Julie said, thank you guys so much for your time. We appreciate it. Community engagement is something that I'm a big proponent of. So, all right, can you guys see my screen?
Yep, we got that.
All right. So as Julie said, we're here to discuss the Girdwood to Indian transmission line rebuild. Girdwood Board of Supervisors meeting March 25th, 2024. I'll be going over some project background and then I'll hand it off to Jason and he'll get into some details of the construction schedule and some of the activities you guys can expect. And then if there are questions, we'll have some time at the end to do our best to answer those for you, or at least take note of them so we can address them with you at a later date. So how did we get here? Why are we doing this work? We're rebuilding this line segment between Girdwood and Indian because it's part of a transmission line that was constructed in the 60s with its main purpose being to deliver power to Anchorage from the Cooper Lake hydroelectric plant. Since then, it's also become the transmission path to bring power from Bradley Lake hydroelectric plant to the Anchorage Bowl and beyond. It serves the communities in Chugach's territory along the way. And we started rebuilding this line section here in 2012. And to date, we've done about 36 of the total 90 miles that exist out there in the field. So why are we rebuilding this section? Well, there's a big need that has to do with the fact that this line section has reached its end of useful life. There's issues with the foundations of some of the structures there along the Seward Highway that are getting splashed with salt water, and there's some corrosion taking place there. It's critical transmission infrastructure for us, as I already discussed. It provides an ability for us to get power from hydroelectric plants on the Kenai Peninsula to the Anchorage Bowl and beyond. It also allows us to deliver power to the communities between Anchorage and the Kenai Peninsula, such as Indian, Girdwood, Hope, Cooper Landing, and Moose Pass. The scope of work is retiring approximately 12 miles of overhead transmission line and then installing new overhead conductors, fiber optic communications cables, structures such as similar to what's pictured there on the presentation, guys, which are support wires that you can see in the photo there going from the tops of the structures down to the earth, anchors, which is where the guys attach, and foundations for those structures. The structures will be varied and as far as their configuration and materials. Some will be made of wood, some will be made of galvanized steel, and others will be made of weathered steel. So here's kind of a timeline. Those of you who were at our meeting in Girdwood a little over a year ago at the library may be familiar with a similar graphic. At this point, we've gotten all our design and permitting done. We've completed all our procurement, and we are in the construction phase. And which brings me to the point in which I can hand it off to someone that I have a lot of respect for. He's actually played a part in rebuilding all 36 miles that I discussed earlier that have been done to date. So he's very knowledgeable on the work and very capable of making sure that it gets done in the most efficient and least impactful to the community as possible. So with that, I will turn it over to Jason Hodges with Northern Powerline Constructors.
Hey y'all, thank you for having us today. Mike, can you flip slides, please? So the project is divided up into 6 phases that have to do with slicing it up into pieces that are easily schedulable. So section 1 2 and 4, we're currently working on right now, and that starts at Indian and works all the way to where the line crosses the highway at Bird Point, on this side of Bird Point. And all of that is pretty much off the road. You'll see our crews on the high peaks working, putting in culverts and anchors to start with. And we're just getting going on the Indian end now. Once we get all the culverts and anchors in excuse me, in June, we'll have an outage, and we will be doing 4 days worth of heavy lift helicoptering. And the structures will be brought in whole, set, and then our crews will come back, backfill them, and then we'll pull wire, tension it, and flip it into each structure. And those sections go really fast after that point. We'll have basically a week and a half per section for 1, 2, and 3, or 1, 2, and 4. And then once those are done, we'll be pulling off for July because the DOT doesn't want us on the highway during the fishing season, heavy traffic season. But while that's going on, we've got Western Construction working on the access and work pads along Turnagain Arm in between Girdwood and Bird Point. There will be traffic delays during that period between now and June, the end of June, for access pad construction and foundation construction. We've got some fairly significant foundations to put in for the new structures, and all that work has many steps that have to be completed to get each one done. So the DOT isn't letting us shut down traffic during rush hour either direction, and the school buses won't be delayed either. Once that's done, we'll shut down just about completely in July. You won't see very much activity at all. And then in August, we're going to take an outage on the transmission line, not the distribution, and do the line work, which will involve big cranes, big man lifts, and we'll erect each structure, move the wire up into the new structure, and then take the old structure down pretty much once a day until all the structures are complete. Pull the new wire, tension the new wire, and then clip it into each structure. And then we have to pull a fiber on top, do the same with that. And then the section will be complete. That's like 17 days. So of between 12 and 14-hour days, which during the outage, we have to work as many hours as we can. So section 3 is, and I don't know the mile numbers, I just know the line numbers, but the 4-lane section, this side of Bird, all 6 of those structures sit in a big swamp / tidally influenced area, and we've needed to be really cold so that we can access those. And we're going to do those in January. So that won't impact traffic much in January. We're just going to have a lane closure to get in and out of there. And that work should only take about 2.5 weeks. And then also in January, we'll be building a shoe fly, we call it. It's a temporary transmission line down the Girdwood tap over behind the Tesoro Speedway. Anyway, and also the same thing, we need the cold weather to freeze the ground so we can build a snow road down the full length, build a temporary transmission line, have a very brief outage on Girdwood to cut it over. And then, so we'll be building the new line right alongside the energized line, temporary. And then once the new line's built, another short outage to cut it over to the permanent, we're done. Essentially. that is a super high level of what it takes to do that job. Questions?
Sure, sorry.
You make it sound very easy. So when you mentioned outage, you mean outage of supply from Anchorage, the connection between Girdwood and Anchorage, not outage in Anchorage itself. We'd still have supply from the south, except for the cutovers. Is that the right way to think?
Yeah, I think that is correct. You'll always be fed from one direction or another. And for the purposes of this project, you will be fed from the peninsula.
Right. So this winter we had an outage. I think it was, well, I had a longer one because I'm in a particular corner of Girdwood, but I think we had was it 2-day outage, a day and a half outage, because the transmission line to the south failed. So we're going to have periods, quite a long period next winter where we only have supply from one side or the other. Is that the right way to think about it? Have less resiliency.
So I wouldn't call it a long period. It's only a 7-pole tap, and we're only anticipating being on the temporary line for less than 3 weeks.
Okay, so there's a 3-week period where
Yeah.
we won't have the normal level of resiliency.
And if something catastrophic happened south, we could easily, and I say easily, one day we could have something temporary,
Okay.
get it fed from the north.
Right, great. So there's a possibility of
Yeah,
in case
It's just-
of crisis.
we won't have that contingency off the bat for sure.
Okay, understood. Thank you.
Question?
Thank you, Mr. Hodges.
Thank you.
I have a question about the
Oh.
delays that you were mentioning. What's the estimated delay that people will be expecting to wait if you have on the highway while work is being done? That's acknowledging the 12 to 14-hour days. Within that, what time would they start each day?
So we're not allowed to shut traffic off between before 9 and after 3 or something like that by our permit. And don't quote me on those numbers, but our crews will be behind guardrail working when traffic is going. And we will get the bulk of our work done during that middle of the day and move during the lane closure. So I can't speak. I think the permit says that we're only allowed to delay traffic like 5 minutes or something. 10 minutes, not a significant, not like blasting where you could be sitting there for a half an hour if you could get there at the wrong time.
Thank you.
So
Yeah, so Jason, if I may, I actually pulled this up.
Go ahead.
Since it was asked. And yeah, so we've worked very closely with the Department of Transportation on our traffic control. Jason and his consultants have, I should say, not me personally. So through the Department of Transportation, what's permitted is that a stop of no more than 10 minutes, 40 vehicles, or a quarter mile of traffic detained, whichever occurs first.
And Mike, do you have those hours that were not allowed to be closed down that I saw earlier? Do you have that in front of you by chance?
Yeah, so Monday through Friday, there will not be any restrictions on traffic between 5:30 in the morning and 9 o'clock, or 4:30 in the afternoon and 7 p.m. And then there's a bunch of language surrounding holidays. Hopefully we don't need to get into that. I think the only holiday between now and then is now and July is maybe Memorial Day.
And we're not.
In general, those are the hours.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, thanks for coming down. Bird to Gird bike path, are there gonna be any closures on that, or will you be out in that area by the time it opens up, ice is gone?
We will be there temporarily at times. It will not be closed.
You're not,
No. It'll be closed next January, but it's closed anyway because of avalanches.
All right, so we have no other questions from the board? No.
Sorry, one more. This is kind of a bigger picture question. This might be for Mike. I was at a presentation a couple of months ago on the potential realignment of the Seward Highway, it's expanding it to 4 lanes the whole way along. And it strikes me as if this equipment has been sitting there for a while. Is there any, what will happen if there's change to the highway? You'll just redo and move things again.
So
Yeah.
you're referring to that kind of that area right by Girdwood and the interchange and things like that?
Not the interchange. I think the interchange was pushed out to the, well, we won't talk about the STIP, but it was pushed back a long way. I think the definitely the concept of widening the Seward Highway and realigning the Seward Highway seemed to be a higher priority task, although I don't know if funding will be available. I'm just wondering if would that require this whole thing to be redone, or does it just affect a few pieces of equipment?
So I personally haven't seen any of that yet. What I will say is we've been working very closely with DOT, as I already alluded, both in design phase and now in construction on what we're doing. I would anticipate that they nor us are interested in having to redo any work that we're currently doing. So I suspect that what they are planning would not impact our structures, because it would be a significant effort and a cost that DOT would most likely be taking a part in sharing if we did have to relocate those structures. But as far as what you're alluding to with expanding the highway width, I haven't seen anything personally. Typically, they provide us with like a 35% design, 65, 90, etc., for us to address conflicts with them on, and they also provide feedback to us on our projects if they anticipate conflicts would occur. So they didn't provide us any feedback as it relates to whatever they may be planning and what we're currently working on, so I don't suspect it'll be an issue.
I think they're still at the concept planning stage, nowhere near 35%. I think this gives an indication of perhaps where they have, how likely they think this is to happen in the near future. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely, no problem. It's a good question.
Do we have any other questions from the board at all, or any questions online or in the room? All right, well, thank you guys for coming down.
And if I may, the Girdwood to IndianRebuild.com is our website that we're working with HDR to keep updated with whatever's happening. So please use that website to see what's happening. And you can email us questions at transmission@gigatelectric.com.
Well, we really appreciate you coming down, all the information and the great presentation.
Well, thank you for getting us on.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you all for your time. I really appreciate it. Like I said, I'm a huge proponent of engagement from our members. And if you are having any issues, feel free to contact me personally. My email address is mike_miller@shoegatselectric.com. And my phone extension is 907-762-4490. And I will enter that in the chat here before I drop off too, so you guys have it. And yeah, thank you all again. And feel free to reach out, even if it's not about this project. If I don't have an answer for whatever you're asking, I'll find the person who does.
Thank you for being so engaged. We really appreciate that, and accessible. Much appreciated.
Absolutely. Thank you all.
All right. Moving on, I think I saw Kathy Giesel is on. Is that correct?
Yes. Hi, Madam Chairman. Thanks for giving me a couple minutes here. From the legislature, probably everyone knows by now that the funding for school, the base student allocation, was vetoed by the governor. The legislature last week was unable by one vote to fail to override that veto. So school districts, certainly Anchorage School District, is scrambling now. Nevertheless, it is still a priority for the bipartisan Senate coalition, of which I am the majority leader. Education funding remains a priority. It will be in the Senate's budget. However, it will be one-time funding outside the BSA, which makes it available for the governor to reduce the amount, just as he did last year. So that is not our favorite approach, but we failed to accomplish it in the BSA. We did, however, today on the Senate floor pass the Broadband Assistance Grants Bill. We call it the BAG bill. This increases broadband access for rural Alaska. It comes with a federal grant They will be able to upgrade from 25 megabytes per second to 100. The cost to the state is about 35 million. It's a 90-10 match. So we put up 10% of the money. That's about 90.5 million. And the feds put up the 90% of it. So that was accomplished. It'll help rural Alaska. In terms of other things, I really enjoyed the Chugach Electric presentation just now because my other lane in the legislature is energy. And we are working right now on a transmission organization, a rail belt transmission organization that would have the authority to manage our entire grid from Bradley Lake all the way up to Fairbanks. Main reason for this is we're looking for reliability. We would need more redundancy. And the Alaska Energy Authority submitted a grant application to the federal government, and we got the 5th highest grant award in the US. It's for $206.5 million to build a subsea high voltage DC line across Cook Inlet to connect more directly, create redundancy, first of all, but connect more directly to the Anchorage area, which of course creates now a ring. We have the land transmission lines and then the subsea, which would give us a redundant ring for energy to get that hydroelectric power off of the Kenai Peninsula. It is a bill that is in progress right now. We're working with the governor's office pretty closely on that and several other energy issues. The permanent fund dividend is always a question that comes up. For this energy grant that we got, the 206.5 million, we need to match it with another 206.5. So I've been advocating that the extra revenue that we received due to the slightly higher oil prices is a little over $200 million. And I've been advocating that we actually commit that to matching this grant funds. It does create energy security and will ultimately lower the cost of energy for everyone on that rail belt grid, which ripples out into rural Alaska as well, because the price we pay on the rail belt determines how much subsidy through the power cost equalization is administered in rural Alaska. So the Senate is also, in terms of the regular PFD, not the energy rebate with the extra money, we're still looking at a 25.75 dividend, just like we did last October. Just for your information, for every $1,000 that you receive in a dividend, it has a cost of $650 million. So something to put in perspective as you look at the dividends you're receiving. So I'll end there. Thanks very much for having me. I'm happy to answer questions if you have any.
Okay, does anyone from the board have any questions? Okay, any from in the room or online? No. Senator Giesel, thank you so much. Thorough report. We really appreciate it. And thank you for all the work you're doing. I know it's busy down there right now.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. I did not see typically Representative Laddie Shaw. I don't see and/or anybody from the mayor's office. If I'm incorrect about that, please let me know. We do have Randy Tull here in the room. Thank you for your attendance.
Yeah, you're welcome. So I'll try to be somewhat brief. Again, I always plug, sign up to the Assembly newsletter. It keeps you in the know of what's going on, what's ahead on the Assembly schedule. Two things I'm going to touch on. One is March 29th, Friday, 11/1, we have our joint Assembly ASD meeting. And also on March 28th from 3 to 7 at UAA at the Auxiliary Gym is AK DOT Transportation Fair. If you've never been, it's a great way to go see essentially science projects, kind of how they present it, of all the projects going on around the municipality. And I know the interchange out here, they actually showed video, you could drive through it. Anyway, well worth your time. Obviously ballots are out, so just encourage you to get those back in. Won't touch too much on what's on there. If you have questions, just reach out to me. Some of the happenings at the assembly, we had AO 2023-110. That was a short-term rental ordinance that passed 7-5 and then was actually put up for reconsideration by member Volan and Constant. However, and that was for the following Wednesday meeting. However, that got retracted because the mayor vetoed the ordinance. And we don't have the votes to overcome the veto. The other thing that's in there is AO 2024-92 that was introduced at the last meeting. And that's the Heritage Land Bank 2024 Annual Work Program. So I'm just going to go through. I'm happy to say that all of the Girdwood requests were adopted in the plan. So parcel 6076, 10-acre portion for mixed-use housing and recreation included in the work plan. 6039, 14-acre portion for housing included in the work plan. 6016, 3-acre portion for institutions and parks is included in the work plan. 6134, 14 acres to parks for RV park or legal camping. I need to follow up on this one because it has projects not supported by the Girdwood South Town Site Master Plan. It then says that that's addressed on page 22, and I can't find on page 22 where it's addressed. So I just want to make sure I understand how they're addressing it. There's one possible spot. And then parcel 6013, a 1.5 acre portion for possible workforce housing, proposed to be added to the 1-year plan. So I make sure that actually gets included into the plan. And then parcel 6057F, a 5-acre portion for GVSA, Girdwood Fire Department, and local contractors included in the work plan. So we will have debate at the next meeting, and then we'll pass the work plan. And the last thing I'll talk about is maybe someone's favorite subject, but Cook Inlet natural gas. But we are running out of gas, right? That's a guarantee. My understanding is the interruptible contracts will expire April 28th. Whatever solution, most solutions that we implement, whether it's LNG or what have you, have a window of how long they'll take to implement. So they're looking around 2030 for best case for some of those to get implemented. So you're going to have a period there where supply could be uncertain depending on weather conditions. So really, as a municipality, as a state, we need to, in my opinion, focus on a couple things. One is definitely conservation. Every molecule we could save will help us during those cold periods. And the other is conversion of molecules used for electricity to molecules used for heating. So again, anything we can do to conserve electricity as well helps keep those molecules in the ground. Wind, solar, coal, hydro, whatever, that's all going to help down the road. But we need to start today to prevent potential brownouts or blackouts in the future. And I know Chugach, NSTAR, Senator Giesel, and both the House and Senate are working on this. We just need to make sure we keep the pressure on them. Summer's coming. We have elections in November, and we don't want this to fall off the burner. We kicked this can down the road several years ago, and it's back, and there is no more kicking it further down the road. And I'll stop there.
Right. Questions?
One question. I think you listed the parcels for regarding the HLB work plan. You listed the parcels that we discussed from GWS, but there was actually a parallel request of transferring some of those parcels to the service area itself. As we discovered through the Holton Hills project, the HLB is very, very limited in what they can actually do and how they can support housing. And I think it's, we as a body have concluded that we are not subject to the same kind of limitations. We have more flexibility. And it would be better if we manage that land ourselves rather than HLB, and they have not made that commitment. So although they've identified parcels and talked about potential use, they haven't accepted a potential with HLB. So
Yeah, there's
a question.
I'll leave you these notes. They're just excerpted from the plan, but there's 2 parcels, I believe, that they talk about making that transfer.
I don't think to GVSA, my understanding is unless it was, I may have missed it in the update for the assembly. I thought I read it, but I need to confirm. But they definitely didn't for all 5.
Yeah, like here, 6013, that's the 1.5 acre. consider withdrawal from HLB and transfer to GVSA.
Okay, thank you.
So
Yeah,
I'll leave this so you don't have to do the work of pulling out the notes. So
I'll read it more carefully.
yeah, no worries.
Okay, do we have any other questions from the board? Anybody online or in the room? I actually do have, just real quickly, I want to thank you for all the work you've done with this. This is a little bit of a win after a bit of a sting. And I also wanted to ask you about the STR. You did so much work on that and have developed such a knowledge base about that. Do you see yourself doing anything else with that, or are you just done messing with this now?
We spent a lot of time on this. I mean, we were working on it for probably a year. To me, it was a pretty good process of how legislation should go. And at the end of the day, we put together, we thought was the best plan with a lot of feedback from owners, renters, communities, and the municipality apparently doesn't want it. I do believe that Girdwood clearly has an issue. That's something I'd be willing to help you with. Because as I went through all this, whether you want to restrict, not restrict, it's a double-edged sword. There's unintended consequences no matter how you go. So you really have to pay attention to what other communities have done and see the impact of what they've done to craft what's going to work for Girdwood.
Thank you. Thanks a lot for showing up here. And
No problem.
Could I just follow up on that same question? Is your sense, it was interesting listening to the debate because I think most assembly members talked about, Girdwood is a bit different. Is your sense if we basically took, I'm not saying we should, but if 2023 110 and just crossed out Anchorage and wrote Girdwood in crayon, would we? Do you think that would get support, or do you think it would have a similar outcome?
I think that would get support. So the assembly was generally against overlay districts.
Yeah.
But this proves that they don't want something municipal wide.
Yeah.
So now we're back to an overlay district, and members of Allentown would be in favor of that. Who was against overlays, but now is in favor of it.
I'd say under Title 21, Chapter 9, which is effectively the Girdwood.
Yeah.
Thank you. Really much appreciated. Took some notes on that. All right, Zach, I do not know if Zach Johnson is online. I did not see him online. Did you?
I think he was.
Okay, all right. And then under Anchorage School Board Liaison, I have Mario, but I see we have Pat Higgins here.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Join in. It's been a while since I've been the representative for this, for the Girdwood Board of Supervisors, but I thought I'd join in and see Margot's not here, so I'll jump in. From the school board standpoint, we did approve a budget that went to the assembly. If you watched it, you saw some last minute changes by the board with an assumption that we'll get some additional base student allocation, which is unknown at this point. We added back the Ignite program, and we added back the teachers being cut. We're trying to keep every cut possible away from the classroom. And those are the only ones that were there that we saw an opportunity and we took it. So the board is pretty united on anything that's going to deal with academic outcomes, and that's what we're shooting for within that. So that was the big change that we had. I'm not sure the last time you've had a meeting, we've had a lot of activities on with the board. You're probably familiar with. We got a lot of upcoming activities as well. Within that, but everything from game plan that we're trying to do is academic based. You can that's one thing consistent you're going to hear. We've been looking at some different structures in high school with classes, so that really the classes would be Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then Tuesday and Thursday. We're looking at that. It would allow students to have a little additional credits during the year. That may give them a wider variety of things to take, and we're looking at that compared to academics again, as to whether or not that would be beneficial. That's in a very early stage. That just came up. I'm trying to think of the last time you got an update and what may be missing. So I guess what I'll do is just simply open it up to any questions, because right now we don't know what the legislature is going to do. We will tell you that we're looking at 600 positions we need to add. We need to fill for next year. Last report we had 400 openings, 140 teachers. And the big issues is one, compensation, and the second one is the defined benefit plan. And as you saw, the legislature did not pass the change with the defined benefit. And today's legal environment, and I'm very familiar with that. It's not like the 1990s when they underfunded it and they had a great deal of liability that we're still dealing with. That wouldn't happen today under the current laws, but it is a big impact on recruitment and retention. And so that's an ongoing concern that we have. So I'll open it up to questions at that.
Okay, thank you for that. We have been receiving some written reports and occasionally in-person reports, so we really appreciate the ongoing communication with ASD. Do we have any questions from any members of the board or online or in the room? All right, excellent. Thank you so much for your time and for showing up. We really appreciate it.
Well, vote early, vote often. Thank you.
All right, I also don't know if Tim Sharnan is with us tonight. I don't see him in the room, but is he online?
No, it may not be, but we do have a report from him right here,
Okay,
page 5.
okay, so that is included in the packet.
Correct, it's in the packet tonight.
All right. And great. Yes.
I think I saw on HOB's website their March meeting was canceled. But anyone that's interested could just look at the HOB website. And they have a meeting scheduled for April, on Thursday.
And I think the big news for the community as far as HLB is this question of the HLB work plan and how that moves forward through the assembly. All right, so moving on, supervisor reports, and for the moment, we'll just keep it to what we have upcoming, if you guys don't mind, and then we'll see how it goes, splitting that and doing whatever we have at. So how about I start with you, Brianna? Right.
Okay, thank you for my report. I'll just make a comment when we get to the chart, and that's all I have for now.
Perfect.
Yeah, just a quick add, I suppose. We have an item later on about municipal bed tax. I've done a fairly deep dive article comments at the Assembly a couple of months ago. And the Budget Advisory Commission, which is a kind of community, it's a set of people from the community, not the Assembly members themselves. But it acts as a kind of advice to the budget. They're actually also interested in this, so I'm giving a presentation to them on April the 11th. Various aspects of the bed tax and flexibility around it.
Would you like to announce the time and place of it, or you don't know yet?
But the time,
Okay.
I'll make sure it's shared. I think it's normally 11:30, but that's their normal time, but they haven't actually announced the time.
Okay, and that's April 11th.
But it is on April 11th, yes.
Perfect, thank you. And thank you for your attention on this. I think it would be a great idea for Anchorage to get a little more involved and interested in this in general. This is not a Girdwood specific issue. Go ahead.
Just a quick reminder that the cemetery bond measure is on the ballot, and so be aware that and study up on that, and yeah, can I vote?
Right, and Amanda, do you have anything for upcoming?
No, thank you.
Perfect, okay. Committee updates to GBOS. Items not on the agenda, but items of interest to the community, not on the agenda or in packets. I think I'd like to start here with GHEC. Do we, either Brett or Matt, does either one of you want to give an update or anything upcoming that you want people to be aware of?
I think, other than that, we have our next meeting on April 1st. Nothing specific. I think we'll have to discuss more business.
Yes. Okay. Okay, perfect. Many updates. What else do we have? Sorry, does anybody else have any committee updates for GBOS besides GHEC? Okay. Status of proposed Girdwood developments.
Yeah, speak briefly to that. So page 2, I think, of the packet has a table which we went through and updated. There's a few more projects on here, including, and discuss later about the Northern Road building with the stream setback. Have an update on the N-Star gas line clearance. What else? Oh yes, and I think there's a slight mistake. It says the second item says Alaska Village application expected early March. I think it's at the end of March. That's correct. Yeah, this week or next week, maybe early April. We also The state DOT also informed me that they are expecting to announce a decision on the airport hotel lease in early or mid-April. So we will hear about that very soon.
Chair,
Yes,
this is where I could pipe in.
yes,
The
please.
NSTAR gas line update. I reached out to Sterling Lopez from NSTAR, and he asked that I announce that he and other NSTAR representatives plan to attend our next regular meeting, which is in April. And they would like to do a brief presentation and then discuss or take questions. They also plan to respond to previous questions and comments. However, if anyone would like to submit new ones or update their previous questions in advance of the next meeting, please send them to him. And I know his email isn't up here, but it's sterling.lopez@nstarnaturalgas.com. So April 15th, NSTAR will be on the agenda. And their DNR case file is still not, the status shows that it's not finished. Permit has not been granted yet.
Great. So do we have anything else to add to this? Comments on this? Okay, perfect.
Jen,
Oh, yes.
would this be an appropriate time for me to ask if anybody knows anything about the Glacier City development, a modification of a previously approved development master plan?
Yes, I can talk to that. The permit case number is there. That's also a hearing schedule. I think I've got the date.
Like April 8th?
Yeah, hearing schedule April 8th in front of planning and zoning. So they put in an amendment to their master plan. So instead of the distillery being 2-story, it would be 1 story. And they have some changes to parking. There's a reduction in parking as well overall. But that's the information is in the case file. That was the main change. I did speak to Nate, and he wasn't able to make tonight's meeting, I think, unless he's just joined.
He presented on that, didn't he?
Yes, he has. So there was a development master plan that he presented on and got approved, and this is an amendment to it.
Thank you.
Your whole question. All right, good. Anything else? All right. Let's move on to service provider reports. Chief Weston.
Hello. Hi. Hello. I have an infographic too to go up as well. So for us, February was really busy. We had 41 incidents, 29 EMS, 2 vehicle accidents, 4 fire alarms, 2 gas order calls, and 4 service calls. March has also been busy. We're currently at 29 incidents. We had a highway large vehicle fire, and we had a dryer fire, and coincidentally, we had the classic case where the large vehicle fire, which was a trailer pulling a large piece of equipment, caught on fire by portage. And then 37 minutes later, the resort called with an fire alarm sounding. And then 8 minutes after that, the dryer fire called. So that was a very busy day for us. So you might hear that we were delayed for the dryer fire. We were, because all the rigs were trying to come back from portage on this large piece of equipment that was on fire on the highway. Good news is we've had a community donation and a corporate donation that will give us 2 AEDs for Girdwood Valley Transit. We have, if you see the firefighters looking tired, it's because they're in firefighter 1 class, and a number of the EMTs are also doing AEMT online. And we're currently doing our annual host testing. I'm participating next week in the state tsunami operations meeting down in Seward with the Whittier Police and Fire Chiefs. And that's basically all the fire and chiefs that are responsible for evacuating areas in tsunamis. For us, that would be Lower Girdwood. We have a medic unit refurbishment going on, which is going to take about 6 months. AFD is converting the medic fleet to gas. We have diesel vehicles, so we'll have a number of medic swaps, but in the end, we will end up with a new chassis that's gas with a refurbished box. They basically take the box off, refurbish it, stick it back on a new chassis. There's a lot of moving parts. And then along with that one of the area-wide bonds, we will get a fuel cell that's gas out there, not just diesel, that will support that. And then wildfire preparations are underway. even though it doesn't look like it outside. The state is, and the federal government is suggesting we'll have a normal fire year down here. AFP hired a new wildfire mitigation specialist. That person will take over fire planning, wildfire planning, and also the woodlots, woodlot management. And then our board and myself have been doing 4-acre board training. And just a reminder, we have board member elections if anybody would like to be on the fire board. Just a reminder, there's lots of Girdwood nonprofits just like us that are on Pick, Click, Give. So if you haven't done that yet, hey, look at all the Girdwood nonprofits, including us. And then we received a platinum transparency on our GuideStar nonprofit status. Any questions? We have any questions? Yes. Thank you. Yeah, you're welcome.
That your EMS 29 or in February, was that high? And I guess my ultimate question is,
yes.
I don't know if you could tell me, but what percentage of those are, would you call hill related from Ski Mountain?
I would have to do the analysis. Not all of them were hill related. Some were cardiac arrest calls, a couple overdoses. We use MCT. I should say that to our assembly person. We use MCT. They're very useful for us, super good. The mobile health crisis teams comes out when people in the community are having behavioral health challenges. That's been really valuable. I wouldn't say it was a huge amount of hill related calls. I'll have to do the analysis. I can do it by place basically, and come back with that. You're right. Normally last year, every month was about 30, 31, 32 calls. And so 41 was a lot. And so a lot of those were critical calls, were very serious, EMS calls. And then just with, we haven't had often fires. We've had 2 firefighters this year so far. And so unfortunately, a more fire trend, which is new. So, but super happy I've got people in firefighter 1 class.
So if we did want to look closer into, I know with the new passes and the hill growing, that, those numbers could increase. It'd be interesting to see kind of what percentage of these numbers are.
Yeah, and with us, with the hill, it's oftentimes a factor of, is it Military Monday? Right? Just because, which is not negative, that's just, the people learning to ski, right? So, there's a accident factor there. And then also, it depends on what the conditions of the snow are. If we have like a super icy year, we're gonna have more people hurt, right? But to me, it hasn't felt like, wow, we're going up there a lot, like off the top of my head. So.
Well, thanks.
Anybody else have any questions? I have a quick question about, I know you have worked very hard to get AEDs scattered throughout.
Yes.
I had some people question kind of the availability of those on the mountain in this last month.
Oh, yeah.
And whether or not the mountain is sufficiently supplied.
Yes, I did work with Alias on the mountainside. They do have AEDs strategically located. And I have talked to I did meet with the general manager of the resort, and we've actually got 3 new ones ordered, not for the mountain, but for different locations at Alias, including, hooray, the SITS mark, what I've been asking for years. So super happy about that. So they've committed to buying 3 new ones. I've ordered them for them. But the resort does, with Ski Patrol, have them in locations. I believe they have, I want to say off the top of my head, 7 to 9 already in different locations. But it's me. I would like to have them everywhere, and I'm close. I've got 27 so far now in the community, which is a lot from last year. I've still got a couple of places I'd love someone to donate some to. So if anybody has some money and they'd like to donate them, come see me. But yeah, the resort does have them. So, and they're very good at working with us on having the same versions that we do. So we're compatible. We're working on switching theirs to be the same as ours. So everything's compatible.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. All right, I think, is that everything for Chief Weston? Thanks a lot for showing up and all that information. All right. Chief Hachey?
Good evening. I submitted a status report on stats for Girdwood for January and February. Total calls for service for the police department in Girdwood for January was approximately 213 calls for service, and in February is 165 calls for service. Total calls for service for this calendar year is 378. Majority of our calls are area checks and business security checks in the Girdwood service area. Our traffic calls and parking and traffic enforcement remain status quo. No major fluctuation. Our assault and disorderly conduct calls went down between January and February. Current issues we're working on is just preparatory planning for the Forest Fair. I did receive some requests for signing some letters of support. I just got back to town today, back to work today, so I'll be sending those out to the Forest Fair, as well as Tommy's made a request too for some support letters, which I'll be getting a hold of him for that. We're also gearing up for staffing for the Forest Fair, ensuring we got our staffing situated. So giving our staff advance notice that they're not going to be putting in any leave requests during that 4th of July weekend areas. Other than that, I believe as Chief Weston said, next week, myself and our fire chief in Whittier will be going to Seward for their tsunami resilience training there. And the following week, the second week of April, we'll also be attending a emergency management conference in Anchorage, statewide conference there. The only other things, just want to let people know, we've had this issue since about the first week of March, and I put it on my management report here in Whittier, as well as in the one I sent to Girdwood, is we're having issues with AT&T cell phones calling 472 prefixes, which is basically the landline prefixes for Whittier. So if residents of Girdwood utilizes the Girdwood phone number we have, which is 907-783-3223 to call the police department, that phone number will go through no issues to our dispatch center. But if you call the Whittier Police Department phone number, which is a 472 number, and you're utilizing an AT&T cell phone, it will not go through. It'll say the call cannot be completed as dialed. And we've already notified AT&T, and is anyone with an AT&T cell phone calling the 472 prefix in Alaska, as well as from either, there could be in Whittier, they could be in Girdwood, they could be in Alaska, as well as from the lower 48. Both our local telco company in Whittier, which is United Utilities Unicom, as well as AT&T has been aware, and they've been working on it since the end of the first week of March. So just let people know, if you want to contact the police department in Girdwood, please utilize a 907-783-3223 phone number. If you're using an AT&T cell phone. If you're using GCI or any other cell phone, it'll ring through any 472 numbers. So that's just for AT&T cell phones. 911 still works regardless if you're in Girdwood area. 911 calls will go directly to either Anchorage Police Department or Anchorage Fire Department to be dispatched to the appropriate agencies. And if you're in the Whittier area, 911 will still go through to our dispatch center to dispatch police or fire in Whittier. And lastly, we're also, I put in my manager report, Ruben Garcia's last day of work was on March 1st. He is separated from the Whittier Police Department. He's seeking law enforcement down in Texas. So we currently have one police vacancy. We'll be doing some interviews end of the first week of April. Hopefully we get a good candidate to get him started on board. We're anticipating at least before July 4th weekend with Forest Fair, hopefully getting an officer hired and on board. With that, if anyone has any questions, I'll be happy to try to answer them for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief O'Shea. Just for clarity, and maybe it was just me, but I think you mentioned Forest Fair twice. Did you mean to say slush cup the first time for planning? And if that's different than normal?
Yes. Sorry. We're actually preparing for slush cup as well as Forest Fair. Just make sure we have enough resources, primarily for the Forest Fair. Slush cup, we have extra officers set up for slush cup. Forest Fair, since it's 4th of July weekend, we have responsibilities in Whittier as well as in Girdwood. So we're making sure our resources are available for both communities.
Thank you. Thank you. It's great.
Thank you again. Thanks for the numbers and especially the split between Girdwood and Whittier. I know this has been a discussion in Whittier as well. I noticed that January, Girdwood was massively more busier than Whittier. Is that basically around the first week of January time? Typically, I mean, is it front loaded?
Yeah, generally the first week of January with New Year's and stuff like that is generally a lot busier. Whittier is usually definitely a lot slower in the wintertime versus Girdwood. And we basically start evening out for Whittier aspects in the summertime with the cruise ship industry and the tourism industry in Whittier. And there's also one typo, I'll get it corrected on the next monthly report, where the second to the bottom column says weekly subtotal, that should be monthly subtotal.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chief Shea, I just got a question on your area business security check. Are those call-ins to the department, or are those self-initiated by the department as you're cruising around?
Majority of them are officer-generated security checks. Some of them are, a smaller percentage of them are called-in requests by the public, but a majority of them, like business security checks, we'll do periodically throughout the evening and early morning hours, like the Tesoro area, other business storefront areas. We'll drive through Alyeska parking lot areas, Alyeska resort areas, the Merck area, downtown areas, the ballparks. And when we do that, officers cut a call for service just in case something happens over there. And then we could also regulate that if a call for service occurred there later, like a vandalism, we could narrow down the times where it occurs as well.
Excellent. All right. Thanks for that clarification. Yeah, and being visible is good, so appreciate it.
Right, is that all of the questions? All right, thank you very much, Chief. Really appreciate your time.
No problem. Thank you.
Kyle, you're up.
Sure. I'll keep it brief. We have a very detailed report on page 84 of the packet, and you can refer to more of the details there. But we are transitioning right now and getting ready for summer. We started a bunch of purchasing to get things moving towards us to get ready for it. And we look like we have both our staff back from last year. So HR is handling the hiring process to bring them back on and start with us beginning of May. We are still out there. Our groomers, our volunteers are doing an excellent job of keeping the trails open and moving. So we appreciate all their efforts out there. We are definitely in a transition. And, as we know it, breakups are hard to do and we're in it right now. So, but if you stick with it, the future is going to be better. So we ask people to be patient as we go through the breakup here. The crews are out every day except for weekends and trying to smooth things out. But there's just a lot of water on the roads at this point in time, but it's getting better as it goes on. So, we'll continue to work through that as we move into the month. And then we are focusing on major projects for the summer for roads and working with our contractor, and then also be putting out bids here shortly for the new fish culverts at the bottom of Alyeska Creek at Davos. And then overall finances are doing fine. We're still in the first quarter, wrapping up the first quarter, and everything's where it should be at this point in time for all the departments and moving forward. So as I said, there's more detail in our packet. And if anybody's got any questions, I'll take them now.
You have any questions?
Just one quick question. I see for the skate park, the showdown throwdown happened earlier this month. I know the last couple of years that's been in a different location. Do you know if that's had any impact on the fundraising capabilities?
It was one of the slowest fundraising events we've had yet. Could have been a combination of things with spring break and different things going on. But with our partners at the resort, we noticed it and we plan to review it with them here shortly and maybe set a different plan for next year. One idea is just to condense everything to one day. In the past, they've done a build right in front of the SITS mark, but it's pretty labor intensive. So we respect the fact that they're trying to keep two parks going and keep their staff working on features they have there all season. But we do appreciate all the effort they put in and all the proceeds coming back to the skate park and supporting and really creating a great event for both adults and kids. over a 2-day period.
So still successful.
It's still successful. Oh, and anyway, I think it is, and we'll continue to work on it. We just have to do different maybe approach to get people out to it.
Thank you.
All right, if that's all the questions. We can move on to roads.
Well, I already touched on that. Yeah.
Okay, done. Fine, great. Well done. Very concise. Way to go. All right, public comment. Persons offering public comment must state their full name and address. Public comment is limited to 3 minutes per person and must be on subjects not listed on the agenda. Do we have anybody online or in the room here for public comment? Tommy?
My name is Tommy O'Malley, Tommy Salami. And I'm here to remind everybody that their Proposition 7 on the ballot is to establish a cemetery here in Girdwood, one in Eagle River, and to upgrade the cemetery downtown. I know I have been, for the last 24 years, boring people to death about the cemetery talk, and it is very exciting for me to finally get it on the ballot. I am positive that it will, with all your votes, will pass. And I want to encourage you to vote for it. We've worked a long time to get a cemetery here. Thank you.
Hey, Tommy,
We do have a question for you, but if you don't mind.
if somebody was on the, wanted to learn more about it, can they reach out to you, or is there someplace to take?
They can, and I'm in the phone book. Yeah, 411. Also, there's some flyers on the back that have Q codes and information on them. Yeah, I'd be happy to let anybody know.
Perfect.
Thank you. Is that it? Do we have any other public comments?
I do want to ask what a phone book is.
Aren't you quaint? Okay, moving on to old business. We have Assembly STR registration ordinance update. I feel like we kind of already did that.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything more to add. The only question I'd ask is just to confirm there's no chance of that coming back. There's going to be no attempt to override the veto. Yeah. So that is done.
Okay. And we have touched on Girdwood specific STR regulations. Would you like to elaborate on that a bit?
Yeah, we have a couple of proposals bouncing around. But, I think they were, at least from my perspective, I think they were kind of assuming that there would be some basic framework in place from the Assembly ordinance. So I think we have to not exactly go back to the drawing board, but just understand what options we now have, given that the changes to Title 10, the licensing code, isn't going to be in place first. It makes it both a little bit easier and a little bit harder in sense. But I think we have to basically have a little bit of a rethink on the right way to go about this. And there were definitely lessons learned, I think, from watching the process of at least the Assembly discussion, the STR ordinance. So I don't think there's anything we can do today on this.
Okay. Do we have any other additions or questions about that? All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mike. And thank you for your work on this. Okay. 9, update of GBOS rules and procedures, review of current committees of GBOS.
Well, I could start. This is Brianna speaking. The first bullet point isn't quite what I started for brief attempt at starting to edit some rules and procedures through the beginning of it. And I know that there's more that maybe other members are interested in doing that were mentioned in the previous 12 months of meetings. So I would be willing to work with Margaret, or 2 other members wanted to work on this or have a special meeting on this. That might be the best use of time, in addition to hearing other members' comments, but I didn't write anything specific about the committees for that first bullet point. If we didn't start the bullet point yet.
Okay, well, we could just back up then to GBOS rules and procedures.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. I think when we discussed this before, we talked about perhaps delaying action until we had the seating of any new members. So I'm going to suggest, I think this is kind of, there's a lot of detail here, and we have to kind of think about some big things, like whether we go to consent agenda, whether we stay strictly with the 4 meeting model we have now for land use issues, and probably include some discussions with land use in that. So I think this is kind of a big topic, and I'm going to suggest we try and schedule a work session on this initially to sort of iron out what the scope of the task is going to be, get some initial ideas out, and then we can bring that to a GBOS meeting and sort of act on it. And then the other thing is, all we can do is suggest a draft, then we have to put it in public for, I can't remember how many days, 30 days or 40 days. 28 days, thank you, for public comment. So what we would have to do is go through effectively one GBOS meeting to approve a set of suggested changes and then have a hearing on that later. So I'm going to suggest the work session probably in May.
Okay, comment.
Yes.
I would just say, yes, I would support that, working on this in silos is too big it's a big, lots of big questions in there and that would allow everybody to kind of get up to speed.
Any other comments?
Well, I guess formally what we should probably do is postpone this action until the May meeting and then have a work session earlier in May, perhaps.
And if that was a motion, I will second.
Okay, do we have any objections or further discussion about that? Because I would go consent on it. All right. By assent, we have so moved. Okay, so we have these, just to clarify, this is a separate topic than the review of current committees, or do you want to have that as be part of the May discussion?
I was going to suggest for item number 10, we include that in the May discussion. I'm not sure about item 11, it's a slight question.
Well, it's actually still on, we do need to at least add GHEC, right? Or are we waiting until May to add GHEC?
Because we have to go through the
whole thing.
8-day delay, I think it makes sense to do it in one.
Okay, all right, understood. Okay. So we are done with item 9 and we are including 10 within that for the May meeting. And are we putting on public safety again? Yes.
Interrupt. There's a comment raised hand in the audience, and that might be within number 9.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see it.
And then if you are.
Okay, is this about number 9 or number 10?
Yes, it is about number 9.
Okay, yes, please come forward. Okay. Thanks, Tommy.
This is about the update on the cemetery bond and the future status of the Girdwood Valley Service Area cemetery power. I think in 2015, the citizens here voted with a majority of 68 point something percent to approve cemetery powers here, which sounds creepy, but what it meant was that we could raise taxes here to get a cemetery ready to do studies and to push the idea of getting a cemetery down here. That money accomplished engineering studies, cultural studies, and also produced a 4-phase schematic plan so that when the cemetery bond passes in April, the Girdwood Cemetery will be shovel ready, so to speak. Yeah, but the activities of the cemetery power, I don't believe that it has drawn any tax money for several years. No, it hasn't. And what is planned for the cemetery committee is that after the bond is passed, we're going to lobby the mayor to increase the Anchorage Cemetery Advisory Board by 2 members, one being from Eagle River and one being from Girdwood. We already have a person, a volunteer from Girdwood. So the mayor will have to appoint that, and then those people will be sworn in by the assembly. Also, we formed Friends of the Cemetery, and they have taken an active role and will in providing information for the Downtown Cemetery Advisory Board. So there may be some legal procedure to delete the cemetery power from the Girdwood Valley service area because it's not needed and hasn't been used in a couple of years. The assembly through ordinance realized or made clear that cemeteries are an area-wide service of the municipality. So it makes Girdwood cemetery power was useful at the time, but it's no longer needed. So maybe you could ask the municipal attorney to figure a way to cancel that. It's not, will be still represented by the overall cemetery board.
Sorry, just to clarify, that's pending the approval of a representative.
Yes,
Okay.
there's more work to be done, but I'm really positive that that's where it needs to go. And I've talked with different politicians and we're preparing that. You hear it here first, Randy. Okay? We need your help on this.
Okay, did you have a question?
I guess that's if the bond passes, right?
If?
There you go. So I agree with, I mean, if we don't need it, there's no need to keep it. We'll find out a way to, once the bond passes. If there is maintenance or things like that, can we, if we needed, that could fall under Parks and Rec? Or are we just?
Intergovernmental costs.
Okay.
So through the assembly action, it was recognized that cemeteries now are area-wide service. So it's no longer responsibility of the Girdwood service area to fund that. Cemeteries now are covered by the whole municipality through area-wide funding. But if Parks and Rec were to support the cemetery when it's built here, then we would have a IGC to do that.
We'd be able to work through that.
Yes.
And at one point, we made an estimate of how much it would cost to, let's say, plow the parking lot at the cemetery, and that would be taken up by roads, and then they would get reimbursed for it.
Thanks.
Yeah, just quickly, that's an example of an IGC that actually the area wide would be paying us as opposed to the other way.
Correct.
There's a number of little subtle issues around here. And I think this is again a discussion that's best held till May because we'll know the bond situation then, and hopefully we'll have some movement on the attending on the cemetery board as well.
I'm taking April off.
Sorry?
I'm so confident I'm leaving before the election.
Oh, yeah.
Ends. Yeah, it'll happen. Yeah.
Well, with vote by mail, you can vote earlier, so you don't have
already voted
today. So
okay, with that, if there's no other additions, thank you, Tommy. I'm gonna say that we are done with 9. If nobody else has anything else, and we've passed 10 as well.
do we have to do that formally, or can we just do that then? So
What?
sorry, 10. We're just moving that as well, postponing it to the same.
We already did that by a
Great,
set.
thanks.
Because
I just lost track.
I said so therefore. And public, so we were on 11 and the questions about public safety advisory, and did we decide that's going on to May as well, right? That's where we go.
My preference would be to push that to May as well. However, we do have this issue about the appointment of two members. I think if I recall correctly, our last decision was to put it in hibernation for a while. So if it doesn't cause a problem, there's 2 vacancies, then I would do the same thing and suggest we postpone that and combine all 3 issues in our May discussions.
Do we have somebody standing in line for those 2 vacancies? Do we have?
2 applicants.
We did have 2 applicants.
We don't know if they're still interested because it's been several months since they applied. So we'd probably go back to them, but we've been waiting for a decision on what's going to happen with PSAC.
We will make the decision in May then. Sure. Okay.
Did you have something to add, Brian?
No, I was just thinking, so my face was maybe showing, thinking that Zach would have a meeting in April, but they may not now because we're not deciding again. So
Right.
April 1st, they probably will not have a meeting.
We don't have a quorum for a meeting.
Right, we don't have. a quorum. But I don't have any comments. Just-
Okay, right. Well, it essentially decides also that they don't meet in May.
What? It essentially decides what.
That they don't meet in May either. If we don't, right. So if we don't meet to talk about it until later in May, their usual meetings are the first Mondays in May. Right, so, right.
Can I make a proposal then? So for item number 11, we should bring that back in our April meeting and have a discussion to make a, do we want them to meet in May or not? We obviously will miss the April meeting unless we miss. I'd rather wait until May, but I can see the argument for doing something sooner, especially if we have people who have expressed interest. We shouldn't keep them waiting too long.
Right,
Right, yeah.
right. And I kind of feel like we should decide tonight, but we've got a pretty packed agenda. So will of the body here, folks, are we comfortable with moving everything, all the other discussions 9 through 10 have been moved to a work session in May. And then 11, we're gonna bring up again in April.
I agree. I mean, if these people would like to be part of that board, we can let them know, but I'd like to go ahead and talk about it and bring them on board as soon as we can. So they'll be at the next meeting if there is one.
Are you saying tonight or are you saying?
No, but I say April at the latest. I mean, we just keep kicking this down, these people. A chance to serve however long it'll be.
Okay.
I think all I would add is that some people may have been prepared to speak on this or decide tonight. And like our supervisor, Sassy, might be ready to say something. Will she be here in April? Yes.
Yes.
Yes, she will be here in April. So then I think that April is fine. But I feel like Margaret or our staff would need to respond to those applicants at some point.
We've responded to them and let them know that the item is still under consideration. And we also did have a public safety meeting, whichever the most recent one was, that was scheduled, which they were invited to attend, and we didn't see them. So, I mean, they also weren't on PSAC, but I think that part of the conversation that isn't happening is whether PSAC needs to be as regimented in how they function, or whether there are some other options. So it may not be necessary to have 2 more members join to be voting members if you change the structure of PSAC. So I don't actually know which way the conversation wants to go. And so whether or not we need to entertain these applications, typically you would just have a meeting. Most of our committees meet monthly, but they don't have to meet monthly. It could be a different kind of a structure. I think, what is it that gets the community what we need? We operate public safety as a contract, similar to the roads contract. So, as long as input is being received and people know how to provide that input, then I think that there's a number of different solutions to make sure that we're providing what is needed.
So all these are large discussions. I mean, all these committee discussions are large. So I would make a priority that public safety is conducted in April as a special meeting so that you can make a decision and we just focus on that. Because, we're going to be in these other topics for quite a bit of time. So I think April, we'll find you a time and we'll call for a special meeting if that's the will of the board, because I think this is a large discussion topic.
Well, and
I'll
realize that
propose a motion then. So we have a work session or a special meeting, in April, on Public Safety Advisory Committee structure, the necessity of a structure, or the necessity of a committee and the structure.
I'd be happy to second that motion.
So just for the sake of discussion here, I felt like we were actually really close to a decision at one point, and then I don't know that we actually need a whole special meeting on this. But I also don't know if it really fits in well in tonight's agenda. So I get it, these agendas keep getting packed, but we do have a number of additional meetings already in April. Here's what I would like to propose, maybe as an alternative, is keep it on the agenda. And if we can't make a decision, or if it gets too thick, then we do a special meeting. But
Okay.
I think that I felt like we have been converging on a number of ideas about this. And at the very least, I think, trying to find a way to downsize this thing. Especially also considering the growth of other committees and the growth of other roles for GBOS. It's been tough to maintain.
So I'm gonna withdraw my suggestion, my motion to the second agrees.
I agree.
I think your policy is better. We'll keep to having it on the April agenda. And if something comes up that makes sense to have beforehand, we can call a special meeting. I believe the special meeting notice is
72 hours.
2 hours, right?
So we should be able to do that. Yeah. Okay, are we good? Okay. Barring any further discussion, are we able to move on from this? Does anyone have anything else to add to that? All right, excellent. Update on temporary workforce housing proposal.
Yeah, so we had this discussion at land use, and it was passed with amendment. So just to remind everyone of what this actually means, there's kind of a two-step process here. We can't pass a set of rules and change land use ourselves. What we can do is sort of work with the assembly and get the assembly to make those changes for us. So the purpose of this discussion and getting to the point we have now and the point we got to land use is agree on a set of general principles and guidelines and sort of many of the details. And then once that's agreed by land use and GBS or GBS specifically, then we can move on to sort of flashing that out into an actual ordinance, and then the ordinance can go through the municipal process and we get a chance to comment on that as well. So there's this two-step process which we developed for this topic. So based on community feedback, there's a number of changes from the original proposal. If you go to the last page of this section. So we've discussed this probably at least 4, I think, meetings, GBOS meetings. I think this says update community feedback. I think it's 1 or 2 more pages. Beyond the table. And 1 more. Here we go. Right. So this has changed since the last time we discussed it. So we've narrowed down the applicable commercial zones. We took out GC4, which is the isolated lots along Alaska Highway, and added GRST2, which is the resort area. We've taken out the original proposal, had 2 end times, and it sunsets effectively after a number of years. But there was an additional criteria that once a certain amount of workforce housing had been built, it also sunset. I think many people have made the argument it's simpler if you just have an end date. So we're suggesting an end date of 30th of October 2027. So that's effectively 3 summers plus this summer. So that would be a simplified rather than having this additional condition which can vary over time. It gives a much simpler risk benefit calculation for anyone intending to follow this. There was discussion and questions about having specific employment requirements. So rather than using workforce housing in the federal sense, the way that housing is normally described in the housing community, to have something particularly tying it to employees. That's a little complex because not every business owns commercial property that would be within those zones. Not everyone is employed necessarily with one of these businesses at any given time. You don't necessarily want to tie it to their job and their housing are tied together. So if anything happens to the job, they lose their housing immediately. So we've basically stuck with the original proposal, which is we have some criteria for housing has to be affordable within particular criteria, workforce housing definition federally, affordable federally. And then because this is effectively staying private landowners are implementing this, It's not being done through government. They can choose to only offer housing to their employees. That's definitely an option as long as it's consistent with federal, state, municipal. Also, we got a question about what would density be and size limits to save having 50 or 60 structures within a single parcel. So this uses 20 DUA. I'm sorry, I know you asked a question of DUA. Dwelling units per acre is 20 DUA. So that would be a maximum of, if you had a half-acre parcel, the limit of 20 DUA would mean it would allow 10 units. The maximum 12 units per parcel, both of these would apply. So any size parcel would have more than 12 units. But there would be a limit of 20 DUA up to the number of 12. So if you had half acre, you could have 10. If you had 1 acre, it would still be 12 because the parcel per units per parcel limits it. Application paperwork process. This is kind of an answer to some general questions. It would require a safety inspection from the fire department. The exact language for that will come through the drafting process. This is a discussion we've had with the fire department. And there would still be an administrative site plan review. The reason there's an administrative site plan review rather than doing this by right, but simply making it permitted, is that creates a process where there has to be a review both from the planning department and there has to be at least a notice to GBOS LUC. There doesn't have to be public meetings or community meetings or any of these other things, but there does at least need to be formal notice. So it makes it visible. And then this last paragraph is just the justification for temporary versus permanent changes. I think there's been some discussion about, could we do this permanently? Yes, we could do it permanently. And we may end up doing it permanently when we review zoning after the comprehensive plan is updated. But this is strictly about something temporarily to basically span the gap, to bridge between now and when we can potentially get more affordable housing built in the community, which I think everyone is saying optimistically, really overly optimistically, 2 years, realistically 3 to 4. So what we would ask for tonight is a vote of sorry, one more thing I should add, but first of all, I say process. Tonight, what we're looking for is basically a motion to say this makes sense in terms of these general parameters. We'll go forward and work with the Assembly Legislative group, possibly planning as well, and get something drafted as an actual ordinance. The one thing I meant to add is LUC added one extra condition, which was I think performance bond for anyone wanting to go through this process. The concern was that the current enforcement process won't be adequate to remove any structures or to guarantee that things that are supposed to be temporary don't become de facto permanent. So there would also be, if we follow the LUC recommendations, there would also be a performance bond added to this. So I think tonight. Yeah.
I feel like we vote on this at GBOS.
We voted on going forward to at least this stage.
I have nothing to add then, except that I appreciate the updates that have been worked on and listening to feedback.
You have a question?
Go ahead.
Well, I have a question about what I have in the packet versus what's here. So is this the current thing or is
This
it
is the current thing, yes. If
so
this
not what's in the packet?
well, no, this is this different from
It's different.
what's in the printout?
Well, there's
Well, it's
considerably
different.
more in the packet.
Sorry,
Am I wrong?
so right, okay. So the packet contains the material presented so far, and I've tried to make that consistent. I've tried to update and make it consistent with this last page. If it is not consistent with this last page, the last page is the thing that matters. So we put in extra material to explain it earlier.
Oh,
So-
I see.
So this is the background, if you like, the first several pages.
Right.
With more detail. And then this last page is changes since we last discussed it substantially. And clarifications and defining of options.
Don, do you have anything?
I guess you haven't made the motion yet. I'm kind of curious what
No, well, I'll make a motion to support this, proposal and move forward to actually having something explicit, specific drafted. We'll move forward to get it basically drafted through the assembly process. I think we have at least one or two sponsors who could ready to work with us on this.
I will second the motion.
Yeah. For discussion. So I do like it. I do like the idea. I think we brought up the land use committee of adding that some kind of financial investment or something to guarantee that that is financial assurance is set aside for when this expires in October 2027, that these structures can be removed. Can you tell me again the density? You're talking 20 per acre?
Yeah, so the purpose of this is so that there'll be a maximum of 12 units per parcel. And then if you have a parcel which is small, you'd have a density of 20 DUN, which is a bit high. Well, it's not extremely high, but it's not low. So if you have, basically what you do is you look at the parcel size, so it's half an acre. Then you multiply the 20 by the number of acres, which will give you 10 units, and say, is this 12 or if this is above 12? The answer, if it's above 12, you stay at 12. If it's below 12, then that gives you the maximum number of units. So if you think of this in terms of sort of small cabin-like structures or even pallet shelters or something else, then this would give you a maximum of 12 units, whatever the size the parcel is. And then for a third of an acre, it would be 4. So this is not extremely high density. Sorry, not a third of an acre would be 5, sorry. 7 or 6, I can't remember.
That just kind of strikes me as pretty high density. Just
so 6 units in a third of an acre.
Yeah, but I guess, are those numbers, are those density numbers based on other areas, or is that kind of?
It's based on looking at densities of small structures in other parts of Anchorage and other communities. So I took that from, can't remember which ones it was. There was, I think it was at least one community in Montana, and then something in Idaho as well.
So you get up to 12 on acre.
Yeah, there's just a.
Okay. And what we are voting on today is you still need to work on this and come back.
So yeah, so because we can't pass this, all we can do is move the idea forwards and get something drafted at the assembly, and then the assembly would have to pass it. So this is just, do we pass that gateway and actually get something pushed through? And that was the decision of GBMS before, that we shouldn't just go ahead and draft something with the assembly and have it ready for assembly action. We should act as a body here and decide whether we're ready to move on to that.
Are we going to see this again?
It will come back when if it's actually drafted and assembly members push it forwards, then yes, we will see this as when it's an actual piece of.
To vote on it, or just see it?
Well, we can vote on it because we have to take a position. And I would expect that if the assembly has something in front of them that only applies to Girdwood, and we as a body say we don't want this, it's not going to go forward.
Right, okay.
I mean, it's not guaranteed. There are possibly counterexamples. But in this case, it's something that's coming from us. That's the. Sorry, I realized the trap I just started.
That's all right. I'm not going to use the words. All right, did you have other questions, Guy?
Nope.
Okay. So I have a couple of concerns within context. If these are going to be turned into whereas, say, for example, or even if we're taking this as general background and as you say, passing it in principle, just real quickly on context, I would highly suggest that the third bullet point read something more similar to the number of long-term rentals has decreased over the last several years for a variety of reasons. We do have some horrific STR statistics, but we have also had an increase in dark homes, and we have an overall problem with a disconnect between what rents are affordable and what real estate costs. So there's also just plain, the numbers don't work if you just look at the current price of buildings and then what it would cost to rent it out to cover the mortgage. It doesn't meet what the community is looking at for.
Yeah.
So, so I would appreciate if we took that business out. And then,
Point of information, Jennifer.
yes,
Did you say you'd appreciate if that was taken out and replaced with the real estate number?
no, I would like it for me. If you just said, the number of long-term rentals has decreased over the last several years for a variety of reasons.
Okay, thank you.
And yeah. We could list out all this stuff, but the whole thing starts getting complicated. And so just in terms of whereases, I think that sums up the issue. I think under implementation issues, there is a kind of very, I'm not real crazy about that first paragraph. I think there is some very fundamental differences between this code, or it says code already allows temporary structures for residents. So conceptually, this policy does the same thing at a community level. I don't think so, because we're talking about something very different than having a yurt while you build your cabin. This is 12 units on a per parcel. That's a mini RV park. That's what that is. And so that's very different. So I would propose just striking that out, because I don't think that's entirely straightforward. And I don't think it's necessary. Then moving on, I would like to talk about a different concept of density here. And I understand that what might work in Idaho or Colorado or wherever else, we're in a very unique situation where, with the shape of our valley, and it's so clear on the HLB maps, we are squashed into a very small part of the overall land surrounding us. And so we are far denser than some mountain communities, not all of them, but some of them. And I think that comes to mind when I look at what we would allow this on. So South Townsite, Lower Crow Creek Road, behind the post office and near the brewery, geographically and conceptually, that's actually fairly close together. So I'm imagining a situation, if I'm adding up, I don't know how much, 20 units per acre is. I don't know what this acreage is, but it creates a town center or it has the potential to create a town center of exactly what we already have happening across from the laundromat, now multiplied all over into our kind of our main tourist zone, right? Which is South Townsite near the brewery and behind the post office and by the post office. So now we're going to expand what we have happening across from the laundromat is into, hey, yeah, don't worry about it. It's legal times, what is this? Times 5, times 10, we're up to how many RVs? What is this? I mean, easily in terms of the overall land, we're talking, I think, if I'm not mistaken here, at least 100. And that turns us into a great place, I think, to come down and be homeless here, rather than, I don't know if you've seen the just atrocities happening behind the library, but it's pretty scary what's happening by the Anchorage Municipal Library. And I would encourage anybody to take a look at that. And there's nothing in this that prevents that per se. I know it's conceptually very different, but this is not the same as a yurt and a cabin. This is creating an RV center potentially. So I'm just concerned about that, because one of the big things that would help me a lot is if we knew that everybody had to be employed in Girdwood, but I don't think that that's something we can really mandate.
So I think there may be, I've seen this misunderstanding elsewhere. I'm not sure if this is a misunderstanding you have as well, whether the language, it's completely different from the situation on public land in Anchorage. This is not public land. This is private land. So if the owner of the land doesn't want this, then it doesn't happen. So we are, to some extent, trusting our commercial companies. They would have to follow this. They would have to, and there would be, we can enforce action if they do not. But it is not that anyone who wants to turn up and do this can just simply camp on private land. They can't. This is all private land. It does not apply to HLB land or municipal land. There's a different set of issues there. So the situation we have in the sort of park and ride parking lot is completely different. And there are other actions as well going on at the municipal level, which may affect that in the near future. But this is all about private landowners who wish to provide some housing. Typically, I would expect for their employees, because they would have to see some benefit from doing this, and do so. And at the moment, they can't. So it's really just enabling a we're effectively privatizing some part of the solution. It is not an issue of allowing homeless camps all over the place. That is not what's happening at all.
Well, I understand that, and I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. But I understand that that's not the intent. I'm trying to see where that's safeguarded against. Now, I do hear the business about public property. I am clear on that, the public versus private. And I do understand that I don't think any private landowner would want what's happening over there. But there is a fair amount of faith here that's happening here. And I want to make sure that we acknowledge that we all might have different opinions about some people's versions of that faith and what's being allowed already on some of the lots throughout. I mean, if you just drive through Girdwood, there's so many code violations. It's not even funny in terms of how our front yards are being used for parking commercial vehicles and just in this and camping zones. There's already, anyway, I'd be curious if we have any comments from inside the room. Yes.
So what I'm hearing is that it would be essentially an RV park, temporary structure, how that's, except it would not have basic utilities for 3 years. So water, gray water, power, which encourages more fireplaces, more generators, fuel storage. Have these been considered? Because if I was a commercial landowner and this has been expired in 3 years, I certainly would not have utility drops for 12 separate wells.
Yeah, so some of this is covered in based on discussions I had previously, what would be required from a fire inspection. And there is the drafting exact language requires some help. But I think basic sanitation we have discussed as being a requirement. So it would have to either be on-site sanitation or a temporary solution. Effectively, being able to use a dump station or something similar. But there should be basic, but there are plenty of places we don't have water now. So water itself is kind of a difficult thing to enforce when we have plenty of dry cabins, and they are a part of our solution.
I understand that part, but the density is kind of scary when we talk. Well, I'm thinking about having a cabin on a piece of land that's dry, which I totally understand, versus 12.
Well, I think we have many more than one cabin on many lands at the moment. So, I mean, I appreciate the argument that we're setting down a set of rules and criteria here. And the argument is, well, nobody follows any rules. And that's kind of true, but the community sort of can self-police to some extent. If this becomes problematic, then there are a set of criteria that have to be met. I don't think the chief has a comment.
Yes. I just want to take off my cap as Chief Weston, put it as up. As a person who lived in dry cabins for many years during my master's degree, but also being a Girdwood homeowner that lives in a well area, don't ask me how I know this, there are many places currently in Girdwood where sanitation is not being properly, effectively taken care of. So I think the sanitation part is very important, especially half the valley that don't have water for all of us. So just you should make sure that wherever this is located, it is not the sanitation issue is taken care of.
So, let me follow up on that. I hear that in intent. I don't see that in guarantee.
Right. So I've taken that note, make sure it's drafted when it has a definition and a set of criteria around sanitation.
comment. Yeah, the density does worry me. That's why I brought it up earlier. But, you know, in reality, some landowners are gonna have to jump through a few hoops with the site review and approval by the assembly to get this. And I just don't see even, you know, I'd like to see that density number lowered, but I just would struggle to see a property owner going through that process 12 times or 12 different site reviews and cramming the people in there for 3 years, you know, so this, you know, I'm hesitant of it, but I think this is, for me, this looks like a nice little Band-Aid until we can get other things in place. And I, you know, I do see where the 12 per acre or whatever, I that would be too much, and I see the worries about, but I think with all the hoops that they're gonna have to jump through and the financial assurance, I think is a huge part of it. So people are gonna have to put down some money to do this, and it's gonna take effort, and it's not gonna be the Wild West and just throw up a shack and go.
So I guess I've lost track of something a little bit. Oh, and I see Amanda, your hand is up.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So out of curiosity, is it still just GC2 that this is eligible for?
No,
Or are
it's
you guys-
been it's been
Okay.
expanded to, sorry, we're scrolling. There you go. Do you have the screen up where you can see that?
Yeah, it just had said just GC2. And I was like, if it's just GC2, well, I own 5 of the lots, so I'm over half the land over at the 1 block because GC2 only encompasses 1 block in all of the Girdwood Valley. Additionally, every single other commercial lot in this community is allowed the multi-use and the ability to build small structure housing already. GC2 and GC1 are the only landowners that are not allowed currently to do that. My intention is I've got homeless employees. Frankly, me getting them on anything is better than what they're living in now. And I need something now because frankly, sharing J1s with Pomeroy is pretty hostile. I mean, I'm down to 4 employees right now because of what happened this past week with Pomeroy. So yeah, I just think, and it is like the 3-year thing doesn't scare me because I'm already zoned for a hotel. I'm already zoned to do these larger things. I need the zoning for the smaller amount so that way I can get a few solid employees in there that can actually support me full time. And so it's not I have 0 problems with the fact that it would be temporary, that hopefully it's something that maybe I could turn into a more permanent structure with a little bit more engineering and design development. I just wanted to put my 2 cents in because this is directly affecting me. There are multiple ways going forward right now, and I'm open to any and everything. I just need something sooner rather than later. I mean, I can barely keep my doors open this week.
Thank you, Matt. I know that we're trying to work on your specific situation from a number of angles, and I think that that's probably, I would guess that the GC2 aspect of this is possibly the least controversial, although I don't know that I can speak to that directly. My personal concern is the conglomeration, the kind of concentration of GC 5, 6, 8, and 10 all in a fairly central area, but I want to make sure I take other comments from the room. Yeah, Matt.
Yeah, I just want to mean, item 16 in new business rights is basically Amanda's property, is basically Amanda's.
Correct.
And so one of the things we talked about is in GHUC is effectively, is it just faster to change the zoning in that area to get her what she needs faster? As opposed to, as Guy said, you know, having to go through whatever the process with planning. If changing the zoning is a faster solution for this business owner, and maybe it's a better solution for anybody that's working with the properties that are listed up there, why don't you just work on changing the zoning as opposed to doing this? And that way you can build permanent structures with sanitary conditions, sewer, you know, if they're in an area where, you know, you're on well, that, you know, you meet the requirements of sanitary requirements there.
Can I ask you a kind of follow-up related question? Has And this form has, did I miss something? Did this pass at GHEC in this form?
So we had a motion, we had a portion of GC2, right, basically excluding the Tesoro station, right, effectively be reclassified. Right, I mean, asset, and that could, you know, we could do that before the Imagine Government Plan can get enacted, like whatever works to make it fastest, but let's change the zoning. If that's the quickest way to get like Amanda what she needs, but also to build permanent structures that, you know.
I'm sorry, just to clarify my question, this specific thing, could you speak to this specific workforce housing proposal? Is this a recommendation from GHEC?
It's a recommendation from GHEC and GBOS to consider a zoning change.
No, this proposal, this workforce housing proposal.
That from GHEC.
Okay.
So I'd like to respond to that. First of all, GHCC isn't a gatekeeper. It's not simply it is not a requirement that, yes, it's a fair question, completely fair question.
I actually, go ahead.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. So this has been in front of GHEC for multiple meetings, I think since at least December. So if they can obviously choose to act or not act on it. But what's in front of us tonight is whether we're going to act on it. And the second thing is there are two different parallel issues here. One is not substituting for the other. The question about whether parts of GC2 rezoned or zoning can be changed for GC2 is about permanent structures. It doesn't. It would then be under the same condition as all other commercial zones, which are not currently. I don't think they've been cost effective generally for producing additional housing, except perhaps the resort. So this is a completely different, solving a different problem in a different way, and basically taking a problem that we know we can, or we believe we can solve in the 3 to 4 year time scale, and providing a bridge between now and then. This is not a solution to permanent housing immediately. This is a solution to temporary housing immediately to give us some time and some relief on the problems we have now until we can put permanent solutions in place. So it's a completely different, it's solving a different class of problems.
Yeah.
I would just like to follow what Guy mentioned earlier and just tell the board and the community that I hear and acknowledge the concern of that 12 or 20 sounds tight when you think of it. And it's hard to also conceive that a landowner would want to do all of that. So there needs to be a limit, and perhaps going through the work with the assembly and writing this, the number would be different, but there needs to be limits in place. And those were off of ones that were already approved in other places. And I know land is different everywhere.
Well, with due respect to the assembly, I would really like to see Girdwood have our idea of exactly what we want before we get it anywhere near the assembly. And the last thing I would want is for something to kind of get pushed through. And I'm not sure the community is really fully aware of this. And in particular, this business of this 12 units per parcel, that surprised me and I've been hearing a lot about this. I've attended all the LUC meetings, I've had all the GBOS meetings, I've had all the GHEC meetings, and I even listened to them in addition when I'm really bored. So this potential overall density is concerning to me. And again, it's this kind of concentric area. The resort is kind of off on its own in a separate area, the GC2 and GC3 to some extent. I'm not sure, I'm sorry, how much GC3 and within Old Girdwood affects the mine area. I don't know if it does, and I'm not entirely into. But here's what I do know is I haven't yet seen kind of a map that's shown up to the community. Okay, here's our total acreage. Here's like the potential of what this could be. I think that I haven't heard anybody say to LUC or GHEC or GBOS like, hey, this could be 100 or 120 or 150, like what are we potentially allowing? And I am absolutely not comfortable with having the assembly decide what's okay about that. Again, no offense. But I want to know what is our potential total for what we're allowing before we say, oh yeah, well, we got to do something. I mean, and again, no offense to the assembly, but they're kind of in trouble for doing exactly that. Kind of pushing forward stuff without bringing the community along with them. I want to make sure we don't make the mistake that some people feel that parts of the assembly are making.
I'm going to move effectively an amendment to the document, just so we have it clear in the record that we should add a condition about providing sanitation solutions, either sewer or off-site removable. So there should be some on-site sanitation, even if it's a temporary and removable solution, like effectively like RVs have with a dump station. Something which can be emptied.
I'll second the amendment.
Okay, do we have any other comments online? All right, or any other from the room? All right, I'm just gonna say real quickly, I am not comfortable with this kind of decision making on the fly or passing things in principle, especially when it comes to housing and especially when it comes to the assembly. I would like to see specifics. I feel like you guys have come a really long way, and I know you've done an extraordinary amount of work on this. And this is also a lot of creativity and a lot of talking to community members and a lot of coordinating. But just personally, I don't feel like the community is clear enough. And I feel like I'm not clear enough. And as I said, I've been through actually, what is this? I'm close to a dozen presentations on this, but it keeps morphing even in the moment. We just morphed and added sanitation, but what does that mean exactly? What are we adding? Like I'm not comfortable with passing things in principle. I want to know the specifics, and I'm not sure anybody can answer it after all the presentations we've had. How many potential temporary units are we adding to GC5, GC6, GC8, and GC10 combined? How many units are we possibly talking about?
I'll address that. It's we're not answering that question because it's not a meaningful answer. It's not really a meaningful question. Unless
I beg your pardon.
Like to finish my point.
No, I would like you, excuse me, point of order.
Point of order then.
That is not a polite way to speak.
Can we, I would suggest, I'd like to make a point of order and suggest a temporary change of chair for the rest of the meeting.
Oh, I'm sorry. So are you going to allow a member of GBOS to tell another member their question is not valid?
Well, when a point of order is raised, the chair needs to recognize the point of order. And I don't know if that needs the motion that, or the suggestion that was just made to change the chair to second.
I'll second. Good need one.
Okay, thank you. The person that had the floor was speaking, was Mike.
Right. So I'm not, just for the purpose of the discussion, I think the chair has gone from chairing the meeting to advocating a particular position. I would say probably beyond the limit we would expect. Definitely beyond in my opinion, beyond our code of conduct. So I would suggest that for the rest of the meeting, we should change the chair.
Thank you. The motion to change the chair was made and seconded. Are there any objections? Okay, then I will continue as now the role of chair for this discussion. So if there's anyone else on the board that would like to make a respectful comment or.
I just wanted clarification if I could. We're going to see this again after you talk to the assembly. We're not passing anything.
So yeah, I mean, it's not the assembly. What we have to do is actually have something that does have all the details that people are asking for. What doesn't make any sense is for us to try and create all those details when, first of all, we don't have the drafting skills to do so. We need the professional drafters who work with the assembly. legislative services, there are some legal issues that need to be addressed. And ultimately, the assembly can pass something completely different anyway. So to get to a concrete thing where every single detail is answered needs an ordinance to be, or a code change to be drafted. And this is agreeing not to general principles, but to agreeing to specific criteria that it would have to meet. I think the amendment that's on the table is to add the point about sanitation as well. So I'd like to just call the question out.
And then we will see that.
We will see, yeah, we will see.
Again.
Yeah.
Okay,
Whether to support it or not.
sure.
Thank you, Margaret. Do you need another second for that motion?
I really just want to hear the motion in one sentence,
Right.
because I think it's got.
So the amendment was to add one more criteria, which is we have a requirement for on-site sanitation, either permanent sanitation or a temporary sanitation facility, which would mean something which can be moved. So a toilet block or some other solution that can be moved.
So the motion that's on the table in its entirety is that,
sorry, to amend this document, just so it's on the record, I want to make sure that the point about adding the sanitation requirement is recorded. So that's what we are doing. So we're adding a requirement on the set of criteria on the last page, saying there should be a on-site sanitation requirement as well.
right? I understand that, but I think what I'm looking for is to just hear the motion stated that you're,
Back to the main motion.
yeah, going back to.
What's the main motion that we're amending?
Oh, the main motion is to support this set of criteria and move on to get it drafted.
Through the professional, or
Yes.
I don't know exactly what that body is called.
I think
Yes,
legislative services, if we have sorry, I'm asking our expert.
right.
It would be through legislative services from assembly legislators. Yeah. So it would bring on, it would have a assembly member or up to 3 sponsors, and then they would pass that through the system. So we get a full draft.
So it seems to me like what you're trying to do is amend this document with the sanitation services.
Yes,
and
trying to amend this document and then pass this document as a set of criteria to get drafted as.
So wouldn't it be simpler to amend this document in one motion and then pass a motion that says to send this forward?
I think that's what I was trying to do.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Successfully.
I thought we were amending this motion that was on the floor, not amending the document.
So I was trying to amend the document by adding one extra criterion.
Okay. And then what about the bond, the performance bond?
Thank you for reminding. That would be a second amendment.
Okay.
So I would like to ask for a vote on the first amendment then, and I had been the second initially. Would anyone be willing to second that amendment?
Second.
Thank you, Guy. And I call for a roll call vote on that.
Sure. Brianna Sullivan,
Yes.
Mike Edgington,
Yes.
Jennifer Wingard,
Yes.
Guy Wade,
Yes.
Amanda Sassy.
Yes.
That amendment to the main motion passes 5-0.
Do you have any other amendments?
Yeah, the other amendment, which we do not have in this set of criteria, is the performance bond. To add a performance bond, there was no, this would then make it in alignment with what LUC published.
Any second on that amendment?
Correct.
Thank you, Guy. Any discussion on that?
I'm personally not a fan of that. I think it sets this, we don't have this for any of our other standard land use cases. So it sets a higher bar and singles this out. Now, at the same time, I understand why it might make sense. Personally, I think it's a close thing and I'm a slight.
Any other comments? I'll call for a vote on the second amendment.
Brianna Sullivan,
No.
Mike Edgington,
No.
Jennifer Wingard,
Yes.
Guy Wade,
Yes.
Amanda Sassy.
No.
Motion fails 3-2.
You? Any other changes?
Question
Jennifer.
about that. So LUC specifically asked for that. And I believe that there is a protocol now where we return to LUC and say, this is why this is not happening.
But yeah, I think so. We have that's the case for conditional use permits and things like that are not purely within GBOS. Is probably so, since this is relating to housing and economic development, it probably is within GBS. So I think it would be a polite thing to do, but not necessarily thing to do is the way I understand it. So.
Thank you for raising that, and I think we would be reminded by our secretary what to do when the time comes. Anything else? I'll ask for a vote for the main motion.
Brianna Sullivan?
Sorry, wait, sorry, just one quick question. In terms of the main motion, we're working with this document, correct?
I believe so.
Right.
This document with the amendments, with the amendments.
Well, so I wasn't sure if we were also making edits along the way. So for example, that third bullet point, did that get changed? The one about the long-term rentals decreased over the last several.
Right. I was listening and made notes because each meeting we've heard as meetings do, something evolves and new ideas come, and that's what would be coming when nothing ever passed and things get edited. So I took your suggestions and wrote that. So since the discussion's on record, and appreciate you clarifying that, the point was, it's a good one. Same with the implementation details that you suggested.
Okay, thank you.
But again, it will be worked through the grinder some more. Any other questions from the board? Kyle, could you please do a roll call vote for the initial motion?
Brianna Sullivan?
Yes.
Mike Edgington?
Yes.
Jennifer Wingard?
No.
Guy Wade?
Yes.
Amanda Sassy?
Yes.
Motion passes 4-1 as amended.
Thank you, everyone. We will move on to number 13, DBOS housing goals. This has been on the agenda before. I don't know if I missed it. I didn't see it in the packet, but we heard it last time.
There were some drafts in the previous one. This is something I'm also going to suggest. This is again a big topic, and I think it's worthy of a work session. I think we need to talk through this. I think it'd be great if we had further discussion, got some feedback from GHEC, and had this as a focus either for a future special meeting, probably a work session, because we can then bring it forward to a future meeting.
Okay. Thank you.
And not in this packet, actually. I think.
So I'll make the presumption that timing for that would be after a new member of GBOS as well.
Actually, I think that makes sense because it would probably make sense to do it after we take action on it. Because the comprehensive plan also has a set of housing goals. They probably want to. I think that makes sense.
Okay. I don't know if an informal motion is needed, but definitely would be.
Maybe, I think for staff, it would be good to know when you're going to think you want to bring it back. Because we could pull it from the agenda if it's not going to be an item.
I think that would be a May work session.
You want to do a motion to postpone until May?
Yeah. I move to postpone item 13 until our May meeting and schedule a work session beforehand.
Item 13 has been moved to postpone till May. Do we have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Guy. Any further discussion? Go by assent. 13 is now going to come up at May meeting and maybe a work session. Number 14, GHEC recommendation for GDOS request for municipal bed tax compensation. Jennifer, your name's on this.
Oh, this is a big, complicated subject too, actually. And there are differing opinions, and I'm going to leave it at that, about the possibilities of what we can ask for and what we can't. And I understand that there's a presentation, but there are other community members who disagree with the analysis is currently developing. I'll leave it at that.
Okay. Would you like this on the next agenda or wait till the email sent about that?
Well, I actually think that GHEC is digging into this a little bit. And so, yes, I would like to give them some time to dig on this and then have us dig into it.
Okay, I'll go to.
Yeah, it's ton of ratings here.
Thank you, guys.
What I'd like to do if the chair doesn't mind, is just to give, it's not a full presentation by any means, it's just a couple of little highlights just from the document, because I think it helps put the discussion in scope.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I missed that. That was part of. Mike, please go ahead.
Yeah, if you go to the graph, which is there's just a bunch of words in here. The graph is the important thing. If you just zoom into that, this one. So I just want to make 3 points, maybe 4. The first one is this is basically how much money has come into the municipality from room tax over the last, well, since 2000. A couple of features. 2006, it went from 8% to 12%, so that's why there's a jump. 2009, there was a recession. It grew, came back, exceeded where it was before, and then we see obviously COVID, and then what we see is this little red part. That's the amount coming from not hotels and motels. It used to be basically bed and breakfasts back in the day. So if you look at the early part of the graph, it's bed and breakfasts. The latter part of the graph, from about 2015 onwards, it's been mostly short-term rentals across the municipality. So what you see is 2023, about $6.5 million of room tax came into the municipality from across the municipality. And that's, that if you compare to where we were in terms of room tax from everything a long while ago, it's a much, much bigger amount, and it's a much, much bigger percent. So about 15%, it used to be about 2% of all room tax revenue was not motels, hotels. Now it's about 15%, and obviously 15% is big enough. So there is a bunch of money coming. If we go to the next slide, next 2 slides, I'll do the next one quickly. Everyone knows, I used to think this, room tax is 12%, 4%, well, everybody knows. Everybody who studied it knows that room tax is split into 3 parts. 4% for a convention centre, 4% for general purpose, 4% for tourism tax. However, back when the bonds were put together for the convention centre, the Domainer in particular, there was a lot of extra rules and regulations put in for how money could be spent, where it had to go. And in practice, it doesn't work like this. You go to the next slide. Actually, the one beyond that, sorry, that's too much detail. And the one beyond that, that's the gory details of what's happening. Right. What we actually get, if you look at last year's room tax, is 1% goes to tourism in an unrestricted way. 7% goes through the restricted convention centre funding, and just under 4% goes to general. So really, most of it's going through these restrictions caused by the convention centre bonds. Some of that can be spent on tourism promotion, but only in a narrow sense. If you go to the next slide, there is, however, a change. There was an escape clause put in the bond financing, and we hit that last year. So that's no longer true. It'll be much closer to 4% going forward from 2024 onwards. Go to the next slide. The other thing that's interesting is we hear that the part for tourism is restricted to promotion of the tourism industry in a very narrow sense. But if you actually go back to what the voters actually decided back in 1979, the proposition was explicitly about hotels and motels. Obviously, there weren't short-term rentals then, but it was very specifically about hotels and motels. So there is definitely room to make, I think, a solid argument that all the money coming in from short-term rentals was never allocated to tourism promotion, according to the voters' will back in 1979. So we had a chunk of money. I think the next slide has a graphic one after this. Sorry. Here we go. So there is a chunk of money you can effectively slice off the top and say that's the money coming in from short-term rental. That has much more flexibility than the rest. And this gives us kind of a space to say that in parts of the municipality, very high density of short-term rentals, high enough that it's affecting the housing market significantly. There is some research that suggests once you hit about 4% density of short-term rentals, it has a significant impact on cost and availability of our lands. We're at 20%. So there is a strong argument to say that when you have parts of the municipality with very high density of short-term rental, some of the money can be short-term rental tax, should be diverted to mitigating the impacts of those short-term rentals. And that's kind of the argument here. So the total amount would be 4.1 million, but that'd be across the whole muni. So if we can estimate how much of that would come to Girdwood, it'd be approximately a quarter of that. There's a lot more stuff behind this. There's a lot more details, but that's kind of the general headlines. So headlines are a lot of money is short-term rentals have become a significant part of the room tax. It never used to be. They are now. They're growing at about 33% a year on year. That money doesn't appear to be limited in the same way that hotel and motel room taxes are. And there's this other big change occurring this year that actually frees up a lot of money that used to be tied to bond coverage. So that's kind of the headline. So there is basically a bunch of things happening now, which potentially puts us in a position where we can make this case strong.
Thank you, Mike. We have a question, Guy.
Maybe for Jennifer, so what was GATC's recommendation? Just to ask the muni for this money, or I mean, what, do they have some mechanism to go through, or are they still?
This is an evolving, this is an evolving issue, and Matt and I talked about it a fair amount this week, but basically there's actually a number of angles, and so this is one possible way to look at it, and I think there's a number of possible strategies here, and one of them is GHEC hasn't kind of made. I think it's going to actually be a multifaceted approach. It's frankly almost a task force in and of itself, because this is one option. There's certainly the idea of building our relationships with other community councils, because this is an Anchorage-wide issue, not just so the way this money is being used, there are all kinds of questions about it, particularly when we're rushing to find solutions and rushing to find money. It looks like we could consider the way we apportioned money, back in 1975.
So we just need to come up with a way to describe to the municipality that some of this is out.
That's one possibility.
Hold on a second.
Sorry.
So Guy,
Sorry.
I know you were still asking your question, so if you want to open it.
Well,
Then
did you have an answer? I mean, is that kind of why we don't have a real action today, but I mean, that's where we're going, but we need to use this, get together and find out how to make that happen, because now.
It is partly that, and Mike can certainly address this as well, but it is also, part of it is getting Anchorage-wide to relook at how we've apportioned this money. And then there's also a kind of a question about what I don't see listed out here is the potential that we might, as I understand it, have a surplus sitting in the Denina Center Fund right now. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but the way these bonds are originally constructed, they're not particularly flexible. So there's a number of approaches. Another possibility is considering, and I know one viewpoint is that it's not possible to pay off these bonds early. I think that, I don't know. I feel so conscious with a member of the assembly right here.
Okay, that clear. Okay, so
it's thick.
Okay.
Sure, no, it needs work, right? But there is.
It's incredibly dense. There's so much going on here.
Right.
And so, anything else from Mike for Guy's question?
Yeah, I mean, there's how we go about it in terms of policy is one thing. We have stated in a resolution, and a previous resolution when it came to short-term rentals, we believe, where you have a high density of short-term rentals, i.e. Girdwood, possibly other parts of Anchorage, but definitely Girdwood. There should be some way to mitigate the impacts of that in terms of housing, and that needs a funding source. And this is an obvious funding source, because then you're taxing a particular activity, or taxes are coming through from an activity which has an impact on the community. So using those taxes to mitigate the impact is kind of how a lot of taxes are structured. That's how tobacco taxes are structured and things like that.
And GHG has some good ideas for mitigation, whether it's incentivize, long-term rentals or whatever.
I think there are two different questions. One is whether there's a funding stream here, and this says yes, there is potentially. There is a legal funding stream. There appears to be a legal funding stream. Let's put it that way. I'm not a lawyer, but there appears to be a way of doing it. That's what this analysis says and gives a sense of scale. And the second part is, what the right structure is and how it gets used. That's a very different thing. That's where the housing goal and the other activity comes from.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Matt, for your patience. Please. Oh,
I view it as a perspective of a bond. I'm owning revenue generating. And this is not that this, it's just the reality. So revenue generating bond, and Mike's saying like, and maybe it's the case, is that there's actually leakage where people can get access to the revenues that should be going to the bondholders first, as opposed to the community. So I don't, so from, just thinking about it as a bondholder, there could be a but because who's entitled to the money? And so we know that there's much more funds that are built up in there that we know we want to use in the community. Nobody disputes that. But when you have a bond, right, and you set up various reserves against that bond as you're accumulating cash. If I'm a bondholder, I don't want to see cash flying out the door for something that I didn't sign up for when I purchased. So I don't, from a legal standpoint, like, again, when this bond was done 18, 20 years ago, right, they didn't envision short-term rentals, right? Total, like not an eviction, right? But the reality is that it's funded by the ed tax. So if I'm a bondholder, I'm like, I want my money first. I mean, I don't know whether the municipality should actually consider paying off those. If they have all that money, why don't you just pay off the bondholders first and then collect ed tax on an ongoing basis and then use that to basically fund housing. So that's just, but again, nothing against the analysis here, it's just perspective.
okay. Thank you, Matt. And we'll keep moving because we still need to get to new business. Mike?
Just very quick, addressing the thing. These details are laid out in effectively the prospectus and the documentation that came with the bond issue. I don't know if you've read it. I have, right? So you'll see, you'll see there that there's a very specific set of criteria for where the money can be used. And this because of the thing earlier, a lot of those conditions no longer steer onwards. And there is a chunk of money that does not appear, that is not restricted according to the documents which were provided in the bond reissue and don't appear to be restricted by voter intent either.
Right, but that's so there's a 2-year calculation, right? So what if that?
It doesn't. You have to read the documents.
What
if a reverse? There is a what's
what if it reverses?
Okay. Yeah.
Maybe you can discuss
You
it
should
another time.
read the documents. I'll show you.
Yeah. I'll go to Brett online very quickly to the item.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to thank Matt for bringing up the financing picture for future bonding projects. That's kind of one of the major things to see revenue stream inbound. So that's a huge point. But I just wanted to ask a question on these percentages on the screen. I didn't know if that was supposed to add up to 12% from the first slide with the 3 different buckets of 4%, 4%, 4%. And so I just didn't know. I mean, if there's something on the table that we're leaving there, might be a couple of tenths not accounted for. So,
Sorry.
Go ahead. Thank you.
Yeah, just to answer the question, there's an overhead component, which is generally about 0.1%, which is taken off the top. But again, there's a lot of details about exactly how these calculations are done. But they do not typically add up to 12 because overhead is taken off the top. So they generally add up to 11.8 or 11.9, depending on the year, if you round.
Thank you for the discussion, all the information.
They didn't take that out.
Brett, do you have a follow-up then? Follow-up, Brett? Sorry.
Yeah. Thanks. I just didn't, it seemed like that would come out of the general fund administrative costs, but hey, thanks for all the work. Really appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. Anything else on this item?
No, just
thanks for all of the work on this in the visuals. Definitely helpful to explain everything. Now to 14B, which is the 2024-0031 request for variance to stream setback at 158 Northland Drive. Here in the packet.
I think we have, I believe the petitioners are in the room, but The reason this came forward is that a number of neighbours were asking about having this discussion at MUC, and because of the way we have MUC and GBOS, we have to discuss it as well at GBOS. So that's the reason it's on here now. I'll say the full thing and then perhaps we can ask questions. But if you go to the very end of this packet, I think the summary is probably the best diagram. Yeah. Slide 5. So if you go to the very end of the whole thing, there's a slide that shows I think the existing conditions, and then I think there's a slideshow at the end.
And just for procedure, if anyone is online and you are speaking, you need to be closer to the mic to be heard in case there's any questions. And is she the?
So
Okay.
if you just go to the last of these slides, there's a map.
Okay.
No, I think it's at the very end. Yeah. Oh, no, maybe it isn't.
So we have the drawings.
That's okay.
In this PDF, it needs to be rotated. So if you can go, I believe you scroll up to one of the previous pages. This is just some supplemental information that we added with the packet, but we had a drawing set done by a designer in town to specifically for this variance request, and it's this slide right here. So we met with the watershed department over several years going through the development of this variance request, and they had asked us for more detail in the drawings. So we've got a set of drawings that sort of summarize what we plan to do, and you can see from the just the graphical setbacks on the property that's about 80% encumbered by setbacks. And so what we're asking for is about 1,200 feet of a setback to be applied to the outer edges of the stream setback variance request in order to create a habitable dwelling unit with an ADU. So currently there's long-term rentals there. We want to maintain a zero net loss of affordable housing for Girdwood local residents, and the ADU would be the garage on the left-hand side of the property. It'd be the 2 bedrooms upstairs in the garage. And that would be the biggest variance area that we would ask for there. We self-imposed a 10-foot setback on both sides of the stream, just that it's gets to be channelized in that area. And we bought the lot because we just love the flow of that water. I'm a professional civil engineer. I've looked at this. We can confidently build without affecting the hydrology appreciably in any way, except for watershed off the roofs. And we've met with the neighbors. We want to be good neighbors with everybody. We're open. Take this before the meeting, and we weren't aware of the process of GBOS and LUC prior to a couple of weeks ago. And so we were invited to the meeting. So we're happy to be here, happy to explain. And we've never done this before. We have developed property before in Anchorage and successfully, and we really enjoy what we do. And we've got 2 young boys that are just skiing every day that they can, and 2 stepdaughters, 2 daughters that we raised through the Mighty Minds program, and just have a real long-term tie to skiing and Girdwood, and want to preserve the housing issue and just help to be a part of a positive member of the community.
Mr. Castellar?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Castellar, for being here and this document too. Really quick, is that person with their hand up with you at all? Like
Nancy? Yeah.
They're not?
No.
Okay, never mind. I just didn't know if they were speaking. Any questions from the board on this?
So I know I'm not sure if some of the other people who are interested in this are online, but to me, the interesting thing about this project is generally the principles behind it. The stream setback code was changed in 2017, I think 2017, 2018. And it gave more flexibility to property owners if they were going to produce a net decrease or at least a net improvement, which generally meant a decrease in the encroachment of the stream setback. And the interesting thing about this is it kind of, from a strictly numerical point of view, it actually increases the encroachment into the stream setback. But I think there's this argument about whether it's doing that in a way it's still a net benefit. And I just don't understand. I don't personally know enough about the process to make a clear judgment on that. I think it's the argument that by having two dwellings and by having one dedicated long-term rental still, so we have no net loss, I think that's a very compelling argument. But of course, that isn't part of the application. There's no guarantee that that happens in either way, or would happen in the future if this property was ever sold. So that's a compelling argument. I'm not sure if it's. I think this is a kind of an interesting balance, and I hope that some of the other neighbours are able to talk about it. One thing that's very notable is, having a stream right through the middle of the property, like it is more or less from one corner to the other corner, makes it incredibly challenging. It's a really, really hard lot. I have a stream towards the back of my lot, and that definitely limits what we can do significantly, but nothing to this extent.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions from the board? We have one online, Ms. Elrod.
Yes.
You are
Can you hear me?
unmuted. Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. My name's Nancy Elrod. I live at 173 McGee Road, PO Box 1235, Girdwood, Alaska. I'm a civil engineer. I've submitted formal written comments on the stream setback variance application for 158 Northland. I found several inconsistencies with Title 21 in the applicant's justification, and they've been included in those comments. But I thought for this time it might be most beneficial to share my interpretation of how the stream system works between Northland and McGee for the board. I say system because it's not just one stream, but alluvial in nature. It flows through or impacts at least 5 properties just between Northland and McGee. The streams pond on my property at 173 McGee before crossing under my driveway in a 24-inch culvert and then across McGee. The GIS mapping of the stream that the municipality is using for planning is incorrect and needs to be updated. It's my opinion that there needs to be a hydrology study for the stream before any additional development. Increased flows, sediment, and velocities could potentially affect other properties and cause my driveway culvert and the culvert across McGee to fail. And there are fish in the stream. The applicant cites damage to the existing home foundation on piers from the rain event in October 2021 as justification for demolition and construction of a considerably larger development on fill. That same rain event nearly caused my culvert, my driveway to overflow. It only didn't because we were able to divert the pond into the roadside ditch culvert. Thank you to Kyle Kelly and the roads department for facilitating a new roadside ditch culvert at my driveway after that event. 172 Northland, next to 158, is currently under development. It was demoed, cleared, and filled last summer without a permit. The main stream runs through 158 and 172 Northland before ponding on my property. I have noticed since the fill of 172, there's more surface and or groundwater on my property. Any more water on my property and into the stream could cause the culverts to be breached. If the development at 158 Northland is going to add any additional fill, the cumulative effect of these developments should be considered. It's also important to note that the owner was fully aware that the property was compromised when purchased and that there's no justification for the request for variance to qualify for hardship to the owner. And I hope that GBOS and LUC will stay involved with the variance request and support updated mapping and study of the stream zone. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Elrod. Any other questions? Or, yes, Guy?
Is that a survey that somebody surveyed that stream in? So
Yes, Barbara has done 2 surveys, yes.
Stream is, and you're asking for a 15-foot variance. You're not, there will be no construction above the mean and bank of the stream, right? There's still a 15-foot riparian zone or something beyond that.
Correct.
So there's no work in the stream. I do notice you're going to put a bridge over.
There's an existing footpath accessing the house now. That's just a bridge that accesses the house. But it's just not a feasible, safe access point for in the wintertime. So we'd like to maintain that alignment as much as we can. But still at the same time, any work that would be done in that easement would be through driving pilings outside of that 10-foot channel area and not affecting any hydrology of that stream in any way. So all of the plans that we have with our proposed pads would be to add the riprap perimeter, gravel fill, drive helical or driven piles, mono slab on grade, and develop those areas there with the absolute minimal impact to the lot in general, without excavating, need to excavate deep or do any sediment disturbing activities. And so we've thought about this a lot, and we appreciate the input that we're getting here, and we want to make sure that it doesn't impact any downstream hydrology in any way. And so we've looked at this. There's at the bottom of our lot there on the figure there, that the upper left-hand corner is essentially where the channelization stops and the stream sort of braids, as Nancy was alluding to, that it's sort of a braided channel. There's another ephemeral flow that comes down the power line back behind. And we want to make sure that we're not interrupting any of that at all. And we're building on the two high points on this property and staying away from the channel. So the 25-foot setback is there for code, but the actual property itself has a much narrower channel through that central area.
Yes, one more follow-up question. And as far as construction, a SWEP, I mean, do you think you could prevent or greatly minimize runoff into the stream, the SWEP, or some kind of best management practices?
Sure. Yeah. So we're disturbing less than an acre, so it wouldn't be a SWEP requirement, but the best management practices we always follow. Silt fence and wattles and anything that we need to do to prevent any sediment transport offsite. And so I'm a general contractor, worked construction for 30 years across the state, and just really like to do good construction practice, best management practice.
Thanks.
Mike?
So just a quick, the question that Guy asked just reminded me of something. So the how wide is the stream in the central section?
Well, it flows from an 18-inch culvert above, and it flows through about a 12-inch culvert through the upper property for about 10 feet. So it's basically that some spots it gets to be 3 or 4 feet wide. At that point, it's a couple of inches deep. Okay. By and large, it's an 18-inch.
The reason I say that is my recollection of the code is it's 25 feet from the normal high water mark.
Normal high water mark.
So really, it's about those 25-foot line should be 2 or 3 feet, 2 feet further out.
Depending on the width of the channel there.
Right, depending on the channel width, but it's the channel width does not count. That's assuming 0-inch channel width, which is not the case. So it's at least another, foot or two either side.
Okay, yep, that's a good point. So Kyle Cunningham with the watershed did make a note internally with I did my own survey through here, and then Farpoint did, and we presented that to the municipality, and they said, oh, our maps are wrong. We need to put in a request for an updated map. And so they have that internally on their agenda. And then, and so the high water mark would be something that would be good to have in there. And especially through the middle, it's just a foot or two of width through the section where we would like to build. In fact, if we could scroll down a few slides, I've got some photographs of the stream. Right there, that's.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, so there it's
about 3 feet.
Yeah, 2 to 3 at the width, and then it's a little narrower under the bridge. So, and then the section where that photograph is taken would be below the variance request. So none of that would be disturbed in that where the photo is being taken.
Thank you.
And if I might add, it doesn't really have anything to do with our variance, but since we did purchase the property, there have been no police called to that property. And beforehand, it's our understanding that there was 3 to 4 calls a week. So in the 2.5 years almost that we've owned the property, we've had very responsible renters, and and we have long-term rented it the whole entire time. And we understand Girdwood's challenges with housing, and we really want to contribute to housing for Girdwood long-term.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'll go with Sparky online.
Hi, yeah, I'm Sparky Anderson. I live at 138 Northland. I'm directly uphill from the new owners. And yes, when I understood that there were new owners there, I was real happy about the open intravenous drug use going away potentially, and prostitution and many other things that we were subject to over the last 12 years. So appreciate Todd buying that. I do have some concerns. Todd, when you bought the property, you said you were going to build on the existing footprint. I do, observing the creek and the storms and the runoff and everything else, and there are a lot of fish in there. Also, in the summer, it's kind of fun to watch them. I do worry about the downstream effect there, as well as any encroachment on the easement between our homes. That's my comment. Thanks.
Can I don't know the rules.
Yes.
Can I respond to that? Okay, Sparky, thanks. I appreciate that very much. And you know, we feel the same way. You know, one of the things that really just attracted us to this lot was the kids looking down and seeing the fish, and just, you know, we want to make absolutely sure that that's preserved and not disrupted at all. And so I think if we go back to that photograph one more time, just to get an idea of right there. So you can kind of see where the house is there, the corner. So that would be the absolute closest encroachment of anything into the variance, and then it would be wider from there. So we're going to take great pains not to affect that zone at all. Well, we won't do any touching of, you know, 10 feet either side of the stream there. And we feel that be adequately protected of any type of fish disruption or sediment disruption or any type of negative hydrologic effect.
Thank you. And I'm sorry I didn't give you a chance to respond to the previous commenter earlier, but I know you have all responded. Diana?
Hi, this is Diana Stram. I'm also the owner of 138 Northland and Sparky's wife. We appreciate that Todd and his wife have approached us and the other neighbors about this. We do have a lot of concerns about the development on it. We're thrilled to have new owners. It's really been a problem, but we are concerned about the water. We share the culvert. The culvert comes through our property before it verges off onto the property below us. There used to be more of a stream, I would say, between the two properties, but over the years, in recent years, between the debris of throwing trash and different branches and things into that's really dried up. So it's kind of a marshy area. When you're looking at that map to the far back right, that whole area is very marshy between us and when you get to Derek and Cindy's on Majev behind them, all of that is flooded with water. So if you try to walk in and around there, that area to the back right has a lot of water in it. There is like sort of a ditch in between the properties that I don't believe is considered a stream per se, but it used to be more of one, but now the water diverts to the left because there's so much sediment and debris and previously from previous tenants, a lot of trash that was thrown into there, and that's on that side of the property line of the easement. So we're just watching this carefully. We're wary of a lot of development going on. I really appreciate the open nature of their communication with us, but we do have a lot of concerns. It's a lot of water that runs through there. I'd associate myself with Nancy's comments as well. I would like to see a study of the hydrology of it before there's any excavation that goes on in there. I mean, we see fish all the time coming through our culvert and into the pool that's below us. And so it would just be great to know that that's all been taken care of before there's more development in that area. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Diana. Do you have any comment?
Yeah, thanks, Diana. Yep, I guess and then Nancy, back to your question too, and Diana, I guess I would have to say I'm not familiar what a hydrology study would entail, at what level, who funds that, who would, how that works. So, you know, like I said, I've walked it with the watershed department and talked about this for several years with them. You know, we do feel that we're selecting specific parts of this property that won't have any hydrological effect on the property. We are limiting our excavation. Like we said, we're not going to dig a foundation and try to get down to clean gravel before we fill. We're going to just barely scrape organics off of the minimal footprint, replace those organics onto the retaining walls that we placed around the sides, and then use the piling type of foundation with concrete to minimize any sediment production during construction. And then just keep everything up above above the existing water. And so there wouldn't be any added water. The only redirected water would be off of roof lines, which would drain down through rain gutters and then back onto the land with no net addition of water to the property. So I guess I'm not quite sure where to go with that, but we can follow up later. But thank you, Nancy and Diane.
This is the space for that to hear.
Can I just suggest we extend the meeting to 10:30?
We have a motion to extend till 10:30. Do we have a second? We have a second. Do we have any objections?
I can't do it. I'll just have to leave it. I have to return to Anchorage.
All right, we are extended till 10:30 and.
Sorry, I did have one question. A question came up earlier about, or a comment came up earlier about impact on drainage and roads. I just wondered if, Kyle, if there is a history of problems, caused by this flow in that general area.
Well, I mean, this is always a problem area, because the creek's been channelized, and especially where it goes under Northland, it's been put into a pipe and, to accommodate the road surface there. And so, during the winter, it's a highlight for us to make sure we don't push there and try to stay away from it. And the crews have known it, and each time we have a new contractor, we have to educate them on it. Over at McGee, we do have a project lined up this year to replace the cross culvert that goes under McGee that is failing over there. And we had that engineered. It'll be a new fish culvert, so it'll be quite a process, but it will actually increase volume to allow water to get through that pipe over there. And then, as Nancy had mentioned, we did replace a driveway culvert there, but it's not directly tied to this creek, but it does flow into this creek, the outlet. So we are constantly looking at those areas and paying attention to them as they go. But they are constant flow and channelized stream.
Will you be making any formal comments on this from the position as GVSA manager or roads and drainage man?
At this point in time, we don't have any issue with it, as we feel that we are addressing drainage and that issue constantly on maintenance aspect. So no, we don't. We see development come in, and a lot of times it doesn't really directly affect us unless we're dealing exactly with the drainage system that we maintain.
Thank you, Brian.
I have a question, if I may. Yeah. I'm going to assume that the culverts that are in place here now have been around for quite some time and are probably not very fish passage friendly as it is. And I'm wondering if there are some options available to you or for us for a community of seeing the culverts in that area improve so that the actual stream moving through your property and through the community becomes not as much of a mess and more of a habitat, if you will. And if you could come up with some best practices for managing the habitat through there, both for your neighbors and for yourselves.
Yeah, that's great. And I think, Kyle, you may have addressed that with that 24-inch culvert just directly downstream from this property. That would eliminate that tendency for ponding there, and it would allow that fish flow to come up further. Now, from our property upwards, I really can't comment on fish habitat there. I don't know, but on our property, the best management practice of maintaining habitat would be something that we would absolutely want to do.
And maybe looking at some other culvert options right where it comes in. Is that something for discussion at all?
That would probably be a service area. Okay. And so just to give you understanding, we call this unofficially Tanaka Creek. It's not classified with a name within ADF&G's catalog, but as we've been dealing with this area, and we started first with Loveland and Alpine Meadows, we've been installing fish culverts every time we've gone in for replacement. There was no thought of that when these creeks were all put in, or these crossings were all put in. And what we're mostly dealing with is, we refer to them as ditch fish, but they're mostly dolly bardens. There at one point in time, there used to be salmon run that came up, but the beavers have cut that all off down at Glacier Creek now. So we maintain and build out fish culverts each time. So we've done Loveland, Alpine Meadows, all up there on Alyeska View. So most of this drainage, we're slowly working our way up. And then each time we go to do a portion, we get called clarification from A&G biologists if we need to do a fish culvert. And they usually come out and do a fish trap and tell us what we need to do.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll go with Amanda first since you're Sparky spoken once. So Amanda and then Sparky.
Yeah, I'll just say this real quick, but this is going to bring in the discussion I'm going to bring whenever we get to the levee discussion. The entire Girdwood Valley is completely lacking watershed data. I appreciate that we're actually having these conversations because they need to be occurring. But the fact that at the large scale, the hydrology of this valley is not mapped. It's not known. There's no studies. And I'm going to bring this back down to is that it's great about fish habitat too, but I'm also worried about absorption and, increased runoff and lack of infiltration because again, we got a failing levee, which again, I'll just drop, but I just want to make people to be sure that they're thinking about little projects like this because yes, they are under 1 acre. However, there's 21 active ADEC construction general permits currently going on in this community and they all add up. And so ultimately, we need two things in this community. We need data and we need an environmental review that needs to be done by an environmental engineer.
Thank you. Sparky again?
Yeah, just one last thing. I think Kyle remember the problem that we had on Northland right above our property where when there was some obstruction with that water flow there, the street was disintegrating and there was a giant ice mound on there that would build. That's where Diana actually fractured her wrist one day. But yeah, that's definitely a problem when there has been changes from trash and other things. But I think Kyle remember pretty well what we had to do with the road there. Just throwing that out there.
Thank you for the discussion as well and information. What is the will of the body?
I was going to suggest I don't think there's any action necessarily we should take as a body. I think it's been a healthy discussion. And, it sounds like it's going to follow up, but there will be the opportunity to provide comment and turn up in person in the hearing. Sorry.
And speaking to that, Mike.
Yeah. I personally don't feel there's any need for us to take any action on this. I think the discussion has been very healthy and there is still opportunity for public comment on that item at the zoning board of examiners. And obviously there's going to be a hearing on April 11th as well, so people can actually turn up or call in if they have specific comments. But I don't feel there's a need for us to actually take action.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. So that
others may disagree.
Great. Anything else on this item? Thank you for being here and presenting and staying up late for this.
You're welcome.
And getting property.
Yeah. Thanks. We look forward to being neighbors. So, thanks.
Good deal. All right, moving to new business, Imagine Girdwood, but maybe a lot of people are waiting for.
Excuse me. I'm recused.
Oh, right. Mike is recused. Might have, okay. I will ask for a 2-minute recess because one of our members that requires a quorum.
All right, so we're taking a 2-minute recess for those online.
I don't know. You did, Jennifer? Wait. I'll just say, don't. Tell me when you're ready.
Yeah, you're ready.
Okay, thank you, everyone. It's 10:06. And for this item, number 15, we don't have a quorum. Are we able to present this item? Or imagine?
That's an interesting conundrum that you guys don't have a quorum at this point in time because 2 members are recused.
And for the record, Jennifer is not in the room for the meeting remaining. So we have Guy and myself.
I think you do need a quorum in order to present the item.
Mike?
I believe in the ethics code, there's a thing about you have to recuse, but for purposes of necessity to hear items, people can sit in. There is some language in the ethics code about to do that.
I have ethics code.
You're beyond our depth.
Sorry, I need a better hobby.
Well, Chair, you can go with that opinion, and if it doesn't stand,
Okay.
it can be.
That for the respect of everyone's time that is here and online, we will go through item 15 in brevity and necessity, please.
Sure. I don't make any decisions today. so-
No, it's presentation that was also done at land use. And then we have a joint meeting for the second. So Bree, I see you're online and I do not know who else is participating.
So Bree and I are both here. Oh, I'm in the presentation mode. That's funny. Hi, okay.
And Holly, this is Shanna. I'm here if there's any questions, so.
Okay, good. Thank you, Shanna. Can I just start talking? Is that cool?
It's great with us.
Okay. I'm going to share my screen as well.
Okay.
This is going to be similar to what you've heard before, if you've heard us before. If you haven't, then this will be the first time you hear it. Okay, we're here to talk about the public review draft of the Girdwood Comprehensive Plan. The Girdwood Comprehensive Plan is an element of Anchorage's comprehensive plan, and it is a guiding document for Girdwood that contains visions, goals, policies, and an implementation strategy to guide land use and your community priorities for the next 20 years. That's the intended planning horizon, is 20 years. Plan was developed with extensive public participation, led by the Imagine Girdwood Committee, with participation with many in the community, local organizations, officials, and partner organizations. The plan is an update to the 1995 plan, which you'll hear Bree talk about a little bit more later in the presentation, which supersedes the 1987 Turnagain Arm Comprehensive Plan. So this plan is a policy document, again, that will guide land use and community priorities for the next 20 years. It includes a land use plan map, policies, and implementation actions that, when all used together by you and regulatory bodies, will aid in decision-making about land use and growth while protecting community character, and the natural environment, and your strong recreation economy. Okay, so what the land use plan map does, and Bree's going to talk about that in a little bit, it supplements Anchorage's 2040 land use plan and provides specific guidance for Girdwood. So it identifies parcels that are suitable for housing, commercial, industrial, open space, recreation, while preserving areas that have outdoor recreation value, historic value, aesthetic values, that sort of thing. The land use plan map works to promote efficient land use that's aligned with your need for housing, transportation, utilities, and other public infrastructure. Okay, so the comment period is open right now. I think you all know that. It's open through March 31st. What I'm going to do right now is I'm going to walk you through how you access the plan. And then Bree's going to talk about the specifics of the land use plan map, which is really the meat along with parts of the narrative. It's really the meat of the plan, okay? So this is the Imagine Girdwood website, imaginegirdwood.org. Everything you need to comment on the plan is available here, okay? So you go to the public review draft, and all 4 sections of the plan are available right here, including appendices, which include the community survey results, economic and housing analysis draft that was completed by Agnew Beck, and then a summary of all the comments and the responses that we provided from the draft maps from October of 23. So all the previous information is available here. Okay, so I'm going to walk through quickly these the 4 sections of the plan. Section 1 is the introduction and vision. It provides an overview of Girdwood Comprehensive Plan, summarizes how it was developed, the public process, and gets into detail about the visions, goals, and policies for the future. That's section 1. Section 2, you've heard a lot about already. We presented over a year ago, background and analysis. It includes detailed information about the Girdwood Valley, the location, environment, existing land use, the planning context, existing housing, transportation, and it gets into the analysis of that. Through that process, we did a land suitability analysis, and it really provides the basis along with your vision, goals, and policies and the comments that we've all gotten for the land use plan maps. Okay, then section 3 is the land use plan. So the land use plan contains 2 things. It includes an actual future land use map along with narrative that describes the planning context for that. And Bree's going to go over that in detail. Then section 4 is implementation actions. So how are you going to implement that land use plan map? What does that look like? It's a combination of actual specific planning actions as far as some high-level policy implementation actions that can help you achieve your goals. So are you ready, Bree? I'll pass it off to you and you can go through the land use plan map and some of the narrative.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I will share my screen. So I have section 3 pulled up, the land use plan section. And I'm just going to scroll through and then get to the maps and describe those more in detail. So part of our process initially was to look at the land use categories from your 1995 plan. So as you come through the document, that's going to be one of the first tables you see. These are all the 1995 categories and their definitions. And there were 14 in that plan. So we went through each one and considered whether they should remain, they should be, the definition and description should change, or whether they should be removed based on your goals and policies. So the second table describes that process. We have the 1995 category, the new category, and the reason for the change. We ended up consolidating it down to 7 new categories, and I'll go through those, but just for an example of a change we made, we went from single family residential to low density residential, and that was based on a few different policies surrounding the goal of increased housing opportunity and to allow multiple units on all lots. I believe it specifically says duplexes for all development. So that's just one example of a change we made, and you can go through this table to read through others as well. So for the new categories, like I said, we have 7. So it really consolidated what was in the 1995 plan. There are 2 categories specific to residential, and they're divided between low density and mixed density. And in this plan, when we use the word density, we're really talking about the impact of development on the parcel itself. In the low density category, we're describing that as what would be a lower footprint on a parcel, so the ability to preserve more existing vegetation. And you could also regulate that through other design guidelines such as building heights, where as the mixed density could have a higher footprint and higher building heights. So traditionally, low density might just be single family home, but in this case, you could have larger units, but with a small footprint, so that it maintains character of historic neighborhoods, but allows for more units, which is one of the major goals in housing. So that's kind of a broad overview. And in the narrative itself, you'll see us describe it as form-based code versus use-based codes, which would require you to regulate based on the use type of residential, which would be like duplex, fourplex. So we're recommending that you move away from that and regulate more around the characteristics that you like, because that's something we heard a lot in the public comment, that people really like certain characters of a neighborhood, not necessarily the number of units. So that's really something specific I wanted to dive into as a takeaway from this. Additionally, commercial categories that were previously in the 95 plan have been consolidated to a mixed use category to allow more housing opportunities. And then these other categories are very similar to the 1995 plan. Industrial, the major difference here is that it's been combined with the airport specific category. Public lands and institutions is very similar. Parks, which are existing dedicated parkland. Commercial recreation are areas, well, really specifically Alyeska, areas where a commercial entity is operating a recreation resource. And then open space, so areas that wouldn't allow large development, but development for recreational uses or utility or transportation needs. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and jump to the maps. So like the 1995 plan, we have two maps. They have all the same content, just zoomed out and then zoomed in into the core portion of the town. And I am going to pull up here on the left is the 1995 plan. So I just want to point out some of the major differences between the two plans, in addition to the categories. So in 1985, there's this kind of peach color, which is commercial recreation. And in the updated plan, commercial recreation is the pink. And as you can see, that has been highly reduced. The area to the north here was part of a concept of expanding the resort area. And to our knowledge, we don't know of any active plans for that specifically. So that has been changed to open space. And that's true for actually a lot of the periphery land use categories in 1995. So areas that were identified as development reserve to the north and south, and areas that were designated recreation reserve to the north have now been changed to open space. So that's the biggest change you're going to see. A lot more open space around the periphery of the core portion of the town. As you zoom in, you'll see a big change at this scale is the yellow. So previously the yellow was single family residential, and now the yellow in this map is the low density residential. And it's really been consolidated to existing neighborhoods with some additional pockets near Virgin Creek and then along the Alyeska Highway. But beyond that, a lot of places that aren't currently developed that were previously single family residential are now mixed density residential or mixed use. And that was just based on a lot of community feedback for the desire for more housing opportunities and more mixed use opportunities. And some other things I just want to point out about this map specifically is when you go to the legend, you'll see there are vegetation buffers, which is this dark green element identified. There are also suggested future dedicated parkland. During the comment period, we received a lot of comments about specific parcels people wanted to see as parkland. The recommendation is in this plan is that Girdwood does an open space and park plan and takes a look at those parcels to decide whether they should remain open space or become dedicated parks. Similar to the 1995 plan, there are the road system is there's proposed road systems outside of your current road system, and this is based on the official streets and highways plan, but also what was recommended in 1995 with some changes. And then we are showing existing trails and proposed trails, and those are both from the Girdwood Trails plan. And I think with that, those were some of the big picture things I wanted to share. Holly, is there anything else on the maps?
No, I think that's okay. I think we can either take questions now, or I can talk about next steps and schedule.
Holly, why don't you open up that, if it's there, that slide with the schedule on it, and we do have a question in the audience. Chief Weston, do you have a question?
Yeah, I guess I was involved in the 95 plan, so I have not been involved in this plan. I had a two-part question. First part, I see that in the Mine Road area, you've taken some single-family homes and dedicated them to PLI or public lands of institutions. And I'm wondering if there's been any conversation with the homeowners that you've done that to their properties, or if that's been discussed, or if they know that and they're okay with it. And then secondly, I just wondered if there was any reference to the previous work done on citing a rail corridor to the resort, or the winter, you talked about turning the second resort base area into open space, if the fact that Dow had cited a road into that area was ever addressed or is included in the comments, so people know that that work historically has been done.
Okay, there was a lot there. Do you want to start with the single family to PLI? I'm not. Do you
Sure,
know?
If you go to Jewel Mine Road and Sprout Road, and just give the rationale for turning those private properties into PLI. This was my question. I'll submit comments, but I was just wondering if the homeowners knew that their lands were shown in the map as public lands now.
Yeah, I just want to make sure I'm looking at the right area. So this area here was identified as PLI.
Right. If you could make it bigger.
The yellow, right?
The blue. So you're showing the Forest Service property. But then you're showing also on the new map, you're showing the residential properties also blue.
So, the difference being this parcel specifically?
There's like, I think 4 or 5 homes that you colored blue that are existing single family homes.
So are you talking about where Bree has her cursor right now?
No, the cursor's on the Forest Service. If you go inland from there, okay, right there. Those are single family homes that you designated as public lands and institutions. Now, further down towards Tollstone Turnpike, that is correct. That's the sort of storage yard area, and that's adjacent, obviously, to the DOT munitions area. So you would want that to be blue, but I would suggest that that blue area is showing single family homes now as public lands and institutions that are existing.
Yeah. I'm going to say, and Bree, you can correct me, that was likely just a polygon error, and that'll get right.
Yeah, the intention was to match the 95 plan there. So we'll take a look at that. Thank you for pointing that out.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Second question you had, sorry.
Second question is the former work done on citing the rail spur into the valley and also the road into the second resort base now completely dead and off the table?
I would say that this plan supersedes the Crow Creek And I'm blank, it's the Crow Creek Neighborhood Land Use Plan. I think that's the plan. No, it's
No,
the,
No, in the Girdwood Transportation Plan,
it's
it
the
showed,
transportation, right?
yeah, there was a rail spur corridor, which was then developed and an area located. And then secondly, there was the work that the Heritage Land Bank paid down for to site the road into second resort base, which is now open space. I just wanted to see if that was that historical knowledge was included in the plan.
Well, the historical knowledge is included by referencing those plans. But like I said before, this plan would supersede those.
Okay.
And we took a look at those, and I think if those elements were to move forward, it could be something implemented in a different form, in more detail, kind of the way this is a high level look at the valley. And if something more specific came along for a different road, there's more detailed planning that could take a look at those specific projects.
Correct, because a lot of money was invested in the second resort base Dowell project funding for that. And I can do a FOIA on Heritage Land Bank to get the money that was invested in both those corridors, just so you have that for reference. And I'll include that in my comments. Thank you. Those are all my questions.
Thank you. I'd entertain a motion to extend the meeting to 10:40, 10:45. Okay, I'm hearing no opposition. I'm ruling till 10:45. Any other questions for the presenters? Brian.
I mean, I have a couple of, I have some comments that I'm going to submit if this is the right time for talking about the lower valley enlargement, and if it's the right time for talking about section 4 of the transportation. Yes, no?
I'll allow Holly to say yes or no.
I mean, yeah, that's fine. This is your time.
Okay, great. Thank you. So section 3, the lower valley enlargement land use map. There's a mixed parcel that lies north of the proposed Crow Creek Arlberg Connection Road. And this parcel should be designated open space. This parcel is currently HLB 6-011, and it is public land. Public land should be used for public good. Recreational opportunities are the best use of this parcel for our community. This is a high potential parcel of open space that has high recreational value to our community. There are current developed and social trails that are widely and frequently accessed by our community. There are approved trails detailed in the Girdwood area, in the Girdwood Trails Plan. Building these proposed trails will add to our trails-based recreation opportunities and add to our desired goal of being a trails town, which is goal R 4.1. Additionally, developing this parcel as mixed use will create airport residential conflict if mixed use is allowed on this parcel. The cost of developing this parcel is estimated at over $8 million. This is one of the most expensive pieces of property to access and develop in Girdwood. So, next comment, I'll continue to be quick here. There's a small piece of open space industrial land, I believe, that lies south of Ruan Road. It is bordered by Alyeska Highway and California Creek. This should be considered for mixed density residential or mixed use designation. It's a prime location for higher density workforce housing. It's located on public transportation routes and alternative transportation corridors. So I noticed that north of Ruan Road, there is one small parcel of lower density residential proposed. I would suggest that this should also be redesignated mixed density residential or mixed use for the same reasons as a previous parcel I mentioned. Section 4, implementation. Goal T3, parking in Girdwood complements our community and does not encourage unnecessary driving. Add implementation action T 3.3. There is viable and convenient bike parking and storage. E-bikes and pedal assist and motorbikes will become more prevalent in our community. Most land managers will have a policy for e-bike use on their land. Pedal assist e-bikes should be allowed on our community trails. As a community, we should include e-bikes in all alternative transportation discussions. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'll be submitting that also. And Margaret, I'll leave you a copy of that if you want to put it in the
Any other
notes.
comments in the room?
Oh,
The online? Oh, Kirk, were you? No. Yes, come one seat forward or wherever you are.
Yeah, I also wanted to take it up. Thank you for the opportunity. I wanted to take a chance to also speak about that area north of the airport that you were mentioning. In the previous Girdwood Comprehensive Plan draft, where comments were submitted by November 5th, two theme maps were presented for discussion. One, scenario A, had the tagline expanded Alpine Town Center. And by the way, my name is Kirk Hessel. I'm a resident here in Girdwood. We need an address.
Not for this part.
Okay, thank you. Anyway, scenario A had the tagline expanded Alpine Town Center. Scenario B had the tagline trail-oriented development. I read each and every public comment that was made available from this particular submission. And it seemed to me there was an overwhelming support for from the community for trail-oriented development. I was quite surprised and disappointed that the most recent draft maps in the Girdwood Comprehensive Plan very much resembled the expanded Alpine Town Center map of the earlier draft. I believe this is very much out of character with the direction Girdwood should be going. And at risk are many of the special forest and meadow features that have been enjoyed for many generations. In particular, the area north of the airport should be dedicated for the current proposed trails and validation of the lengthy community process that's been undertaken to advance this plan. As a developer of wilderness lodges in sensitive and remote areas, association with our Girdwood-based company, Alaska Wildland Ventures, I'd like to point out that trail use and the construction of trails are actually an economically valuable form of development. This is not a case of development versus protection. This is a case of one form of development versus another form of development. Maintaining accessible natural areas near community for year-round outdoor recreation adds value to local lifestyles, attracts desirable residents, adds value to private property, and also attracts desirable year-round visitors that stay longer and spend money in our community. In this case, it's a more prudent form of development that adds value and contributes to a sustainable economy while protecting incredible natural values. The enchanted forest and secret meadow and other treasured places are worthy of protecting and enjoying well into the future. And I ask that the board consider that area north of the airport in your deliberations and discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else in the room? Anyone online? I don't see hands, so. Okay, I'll go back to Bree and Holly.
Okay, so I just want to finish up with the schedule and how you participate. So we released the draft at the end of February. That was February 28th. That was at a Imagine Girdwood committee meeting, I believe. And then we already presented for the first time at the Land Use Committee on the 11th. Here we are today, March 25th, first presentation here at GBOS. And then on March 31st at midnight will be the public comment deadline. So we'll take all the public comments that we get with this public review draft. We will incorporate changes and we'll release a final draft based on what we heard on April 24th in advance of your joint meeting on the 29th. And on that meeting on the 29th, we will give a more detailed presentation on how the final draft has changed from this public review draft based on all the comments we heard. So you can expect a more detailed presentation on that, that process we went through on the 29th. So we're hoping that at that meeting, you make some sort of decision. You deliberate and make a decision. And then we will take what you decided and move forward into a formal application to the Planning and Zoning Commission. If things stay on schedule, we anticipate a Planning and Zoning Commission public hearing in July. And then in the fall, then working through the assembly process. How do you comment? Oh yeah, right, sorry. I'm not as good late at night, friends. You can probably tell that already. All right, okay. How do you comment? So I clicked on the public review draft here, and there's a comment form link here. And we've done this specifically to help us because we have a pretty tight timeline from when we're getting the comments and when we have to turn around the next draft to you all. So you can comment as many times as you want. However, we ask that you make, like if you have 30 comments on the draft, please submit this form 30 times. It's really easy to do. It just helps us with the organization process. So it lets you pick a topic, whether it's housing, land use, implementation, transportation, or other. So you pick the category, help us out a little bit with the page number, the comment, the specific comment that you have, and then if you're recommending a plan change, to also include that. Like the person who commented at the beginning, if you have a specific place, like these 4 parcels here that are accidentally PLI instead of residential, you can actually put a little location on the map that corresponds with your comment. If you're like, oh, oops, I didn't mean that, I meant here, you can move it around. If you want to get rid of it, you can click the trash can and get rid of it. But that'll help us by identifying a place on the map. Give us your name, your email only if you want, and then click submit. And again, once you click submit, it'll take you right back to the beginning of the form. And then you can make another comment again if you'd like. Again, comment deadline is March 31st. Okay. I'll stop there. Any questions on process or schedule?
Any questions in the room? Polly, I just saw it myself there with this asterisk by your name. Is there any anonymity in this, or will they all be tracked by individuals?
Yeah, it'll all be tracked by individual. I mean, if there's a reason you want to be anonymous, I guess we can talk about that, but it's not, I don't know, it's not typical.
Right.
I mean, we protect your address and your email and all that kind of thing, but usually somebody, when submitting a comment, puts their name next to it.
Did I see a hand randomly in the room? Okay. I don't see any questions otherwise. So thank you for starting. Yes.
Just one quick comment. There's another Imagine Girdwood meeting on Wednesday this week. Wednesday at 6 o'clock. It's on the same website. There's going to be a more detailed Q&A on this plan adapt. So there's another opportunity before next month, before the public comment deadline on Sunday.
Yes. Imagine Girdwood meeting 27. Okay, anything else? Thank you, Holly and Bree, and all of your work, and everyone for making comments.
Thank you, everyone, very much.
I have a question for staff regarding have a good night, the rest of the agenda. It's new business, but is there anything that we have to hear? 16 through 23, like number 23, or?
We do want to make the purchase of the new trailer. And we are starting the process on, we just wanted to get that going so that when we are prepared to make those purchases, we don't have to wait a whole 30 days to make it happen.
Oh, I need to call in the other board members. So Amanda Sassy and Mike Edgington. Please come back. Margaret?
I think also we have people who have been online now for some time with regard to item number 20.
Yes.
So I think for introduction purposes anyway, like I personally would like to see all of these introduced so that they can go someplace at the next meeting, but
I agree, yeah, if we could.
I mean, this is something on a larger scale that we should discuss for consent agenda, but you could make a motion consent and then see if anybody wants to pull certain things to talk about. But you also have to make a motion first to extend the meeting because you're 10 minutes past.
Oh, we have 4 minutes still, but yes. I would entertain a motion to extend the meeting.
Move to extend to 10:55.
Second?
Second, but that's the last second.
Okay, thank you, guys. I will rule that we go until 55. And then the next motion that could be entertained is having these numbers in a consent. And then poll.
So I guess I'm going to move it with item 16, 17, 18, 19, and maybe 23. We kind of move them onto the old business agenda at our next meeting.
Amanda, are you willing to second? Oh,
I'll let him second then.
Sorry, I forgot I was on my computer and not on my phone.
that's okay. Are you willing to second that real quick?
Yep, I second.
Thank you.
So what are we doing real quick? We're just saying these have been
Yeah.
shown and we can move them.
Yeah.
So can we do that for the, I would like to include, did you say 21?
21 and 20 we can still discuss. We're going to discuss now. The rest we'll just move on. We kind of know most of them, so.
Okay.
Okay, any other comments, no objections? We'll go by assent, so we'll jump to number 20 is my understanding. So discuss levies in Girdwood, California Creek levy protecting town center. Start with that one. And I know Amanda's online and you've done a lot of research and work on this. Is she speaking to this first or Kyle?
Sure. I mean, I can introduce it. And this was brought to staff's attention to research the ownership of the levee in Old Town. And so we did that, and we've learned that the levee was built probably quickly post 1964 earthquake. It was before any sort of regulating agency was in charge of levee development here, especially in Girdwood, and flood requirements. And so it currently serves as a levee, but also serves as a roadway. We do maintain the surface as access to the property owners back there, and there's also access to the levee area. But it is outside of what is the right of way for that region. And the land is managed by the Heritage Land Bank. It's within a parcel managed down there. The levee sits between two other property owners, which is Alaska Railroad and the DOT. And so they actually have part of the levee on their land, with the railroad having the levee on the other side of their tracks. And then right down to the road there. But I'll let Amanda speak to it because she has brought this to her attention. She's about the worry and potential of it failing, and what would happen for the future with managing it.
All right, thank you guys. And I have literally put in hundreds of hours into this at this point. So to keep it super high level, I'm going to state some bullet points. Army Corps of Engineers and DNR were unaware that the levee existed until I spoke with them here recently. Levies are not regulated at the municipality or the state level, only federally. The Army Corps of Engineers oversees the national database of levies and is the federal regulator. The Old Girdwood levee is not listed in the national database. The Army Corps of Engineers cannot regulate a levee that was not federally engineered if we can't prove it. To date, I've been unable to locate any design drawing on the levee or reference to it. The Alaska Railroad and the Federal Seward Highway are joined to the levee. They are engineered together. Heritage Land Bank is the owner of the property. The levy property was sold to the MOA on 12/20 of 1984. And I actually have a copy of that land conveyance document for the parcel from the DNR. The Alaska Railroad has a 100-foot wide easement on both sides of the railroad. The railroad easement is known to supersede almost all other jurisdictions, including private property. To date, I've been unable to locate any information on maintenance records or inspections for the levee. The levee is currently failing. I have witnessed it myself, the near overtopping in the late October, November 2021 event, which was our last high water event. The levee is failing directly as a result of the main tributary of the Girdwood Valley, Glacier Creek, being constricted and channelized at the railroad trestle that was built in 1925. Glacier Creek drains approximately 62 square miles of temperate rainforest. The confluence of Glacier Creek and California Creek also occurs at the railroad trestle. California Creek actually tees into the railroad tracks almost 3 blocks west of the trestle and is channelized by the railroad track bed. To date, I've been unable to locate any information. Repeat that one. The hydraulic flow from California Creek is being forced to complete a 90-degree turn as it converges with Glacier Creek, and has created a very strong hydraulic that is eroding the riprap of the levee away, in addition to the failure of the overtopping. The levee protects the highest percentage of owner-occupied homes in the entire Girdwood Valley at 48%. Those numbers came from Mike. We have approximately 100 full-time residents who live behind the levee and approximately 10 business fronts. We also have critical utilities by Chugach Electric, Instar, and Fiber Optics. Additionally, due to the levee being joined by the Alaska Railroad and Seward Highway and the sinking of private property due to the continuous upkeep the state and federal agencies have done on their infrastructure, our culverts are clogged and the water would become trapped in the old Girdwood residential area. The disruption of transportation and utilities would be guaranteed if the levee was to fail. Additionally, there's no adequate hydraulic data for the Girdwood Valley. The only water monitoring station is located almost 1.5 miles upriver on the Alyeska Highway Bridge. The only water data on Glacier Creek that has been completed to date was done in 1969, and that was on our floods. To date, there's never been an environmental assessment of the Girdwood Valley at the watershed level. Heritage Land Bank has listed 15 documents on their website that HLB has stated that it makes them meet the intention of the Municipal Code Title 25 40.025C, which requires environmental reviews before selling of public lands. Only 10 of these documents are relevant to Girdwood. The most recent feasibility study was done in 2007. All 10 documents are site-specific, and none of them discuss the presence of the community of Old Girdwood. And the farthest south that any of these plans even references in the plans is Ruan, and only one plan did that. In 1995, the Girdwood Area Plan that we're still currently operating under is using water data from the 70s and 80s. The MOA Watershed Department has no data on the Girdwood Valley as well. To date, there has never been a full environmental impact review for the Girdwood Valley. The new comprehensive plan that we just discussed is also not using current hydraulic data. Obviously, we have no data. Federally funded dollars can mandate a full environmental impact review for the Holton Hills project due to the receiving of federal funding from Murkowski. The problem is that we have no data, and no data is bad data, and it's allowing for bad development that is going to cause a natural catastrophe if we don't act upon this. So what can we do? We need a monitoring station on the railroad trestle to begin with, and we need to understand what's going on. I have initiated this discussion with USGS, as they're the one who installed with funding on the Alyeska Bridge, their monitoring station. The railroad needs to be updated to update the trestle to meet the hydrology and understand the impact on the public infrastructure. Like I said, their jurisdiction is that first 100 feet, which is actually where the levee is mainly failing. Federal DOT also needs to be a part of this discussion, along with all the other utilities that could go down. Obviously, disruption of transportation would be imminent if the levee was to break, because either the trestle will go with it, or the highway will go with it, or potentially both. Heritage Land Bank needs to be in compliance with Title 25 in the Anchorage Bold Comprehensive Plan Policy number 77 that states that once level of service standards are adopted, New development should be required to pay for a portion of its own infrastructure and for impacts on other public infrastructure elements. So obviously the irony is here is that HLB is the owner. And so here the people that I started this whole research with was to protect myself from, and that was their urban development and selling of these public lands, are now the people that are supposed to be protecting us. Yeah, and so I just think we need the trestle needs to be a part of the levy discussion. And we can continue that the next meeting.
I wish I didn't have to interrupt you, Amanda, and that is also, it is really fascinating. And if there's anything you missed, please submit it to us in email.
Okay.
And then I know we could probably ask questions, but we still have item number 21.
Yeah, no, I would just rather see that if we could just continue having, put it on like the old business. If we could just have get people talking. So we're moving forward on this. And then, I mean, obviously these things are getting brought up. They were brought up earlier in the meeting, and people are starting to realize that hydrology of this valley matters and it's impacting their private lands, let alone looking at us all the way downstream, and nobody's ever analyzed us all the way downstream. So it needs to be done. Yeah, I just would love to see this put on the new business, on the meeting agenda, so we can hopefully get more people aware of what's going on. And we can start looking at this at a bigger picture, which is the watershed level.
Thank you. Thank you. I guess I would, in the interest of everyone's time, I know, Ms. Zaccaro, you've been waiting here for a really long time. So we move to you really quick.
Thank you. My interest is really just getting introduced, so we can come back as old business. The plan is basically like it was last year, with a couple tweaks. I'm going to talk a little bit more with Chief Weston. I'm in conversations with Chief Ashe, and I look forward to you maybe looking through that document again and coming up, refreshing your memory for what your recommendations might be for the 2024 fair.
Thank you. And it's right here. So
Thank you.
Thanks. And with that, anything else from staff?
I think item number 23, please.
23, yes.
Quickly, we're looking to buy a dump trailer for park operations. And then we are looking to reseal and repaint the tennis courts. So we'll be coming to you at the next meeting to seek approval for the funding for that.
Great. Thank you. We tried to include that with consent, but it's great to hear.
Oh, sorry.
Anything else from the board? Entertained a motion to adjourn?
No. Second.
Tie. We are adjourned. Thank
Good night, everybody.
Everyone.